Welcome to another compilation episode. This is the last one of our rest month in the summer. And then next week, we actually start back up with regular episodes, and we'll be excited to share that. But for today, we're talking about something really big: politics, money, relationships. We're talking about these three big items and how to navigate hard conversations in all of these. How to talk about politics at work with Chris Geggy, how to talk about money in your relationship with Chris Hensley, and then how to talk about your relationship for those of you that are men out there married to a woman, how to talk about relationship stuff and repair relationships with Brandy Pryor. So hope you get something out of this. These were really interesting episodes that we did, and we look forward to seeing you next week when we jump into the new episodes for season 3. See you next week.
Being a really good listener is crucial in this, right? At the end of the day, when I sit and I do a discovery meeting with a client, I really want to be doing about 20% of the talking compared to 80% of the client. It's going to be about them. If I'm doing my job correctly, then I'm asking those probing, open-ended questions to get them to really open up, right?
Christopher, welcome for joining me on our podcast.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here.
And I'm always a big fan of meeting other Christophers. I won't introduce too much of what you do now because I want you to share kind of in your own words. What do you do and how did you get to where you're at?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have a couple of different hats that I wear. My for-profit business is I'm a financial advisor. I'm the owner of Houston First Financial Group, and I've been doing that for about 20 years now. But I also am a podcaster as well. In fact, you were on my show earlier this month, which is about to come out here in the next couple of days or so. And we had a great conversation on that. So I wear a couple different hats there. The show Money Matters podcast, we've been on the air for about 10 years, which in podcasting terms is a long time. And so really people either know me through the podcast or for the financial planning and retirement planning that I do. Yeah.
And so, one of the reasons I'm excited to talk to you is because my wife and I have had a financial advisor since we got married. Instrumental, super instrumental. Everybody listening should get a financial advisor. Number one thing, you should get a financial advisor because money is hard to talk about. And when my wife and I got married, we had no idea how to combine our finances, how to think about finances. We had lots of loans that we were trying to pay off at the same time. It's so helpful to get everything in order, pay off our finances. We've got insurance that we thought were like, do we really need extra life and disability insurance? Turns out, yes, we do need extra life and disability insurance.
100%. Yeah, I've never had a widow look at me and say, "Oh, we've got too much insurance." That's a thing, and it's one of those things that I think we tend to think we're going to live forever. Or you've got that kind of idea in the back of your head, like, man, maybe we don't need this. But having seen how these things can play out, it's definitely a good thing when stuff happens, right?
Yeah, it's like that's really the essence of it, right? Like this is in case something catastrophic happens. And our financial advisor, because like the work both me and my wife do are white collar workers, right? So even if we get hurt or disabled, we can still kind of work. But our financial advisor was really able to help us think through yes, you're right. If you get hurt, you could still work. But what if you couldn't even do that? That means you are so catastrophically hurt that you do need some kind of income and some kind of way to do that medical support. And so that was like, oh yeah, you're right. And then all that kind of stuff. And so as we were talking before about kind of what you wanted to share, this podcast is about typical conversations. And it's timely because my mom is downsizing her house. My parents are, older. So the idea of estate planning, the idea of talking even about death and finances was already hard. Lots of people struggle to talk about finances, but even then talking about death and planning what to do and thinking about that as a reality, I guess, how do you conceptualize, how do you get comfortable with that idea of talking about that topic or too heavy topics?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, I'm smiling a little bit because even I just used a euphemism when I said when stuff happens, right? But what I was talking about was death, right? And so it can be, a difficult topic, not just for us as professionals, but for individuals, people just discussing death. I think we've all heard the idea that public speaking and death people hold these on about the same level as far as things that they're afraid of and have issues even bringing up and discussing. The good news, after having dealt with these issues for many years, is that with estate planning, this can't. It's not as big a deal as people think when it comes to just sitting down and getting your core legal documents in place, right? So there's this idea that if you just approach or bring up the topic of death, that sometimes I'll see clients start doing the hand wringing, or it's just that just uncomfortable just even approaching it, right? But it's actually the opposite. It's one of these things, once you get started putting those plans in place, which would be your core legal documents, right? Your will, your trust, your healthcare, your financial power of attorney, your healthcare surrogate, all of those things that you need to have as core legal documents. Once you have that stuff in writing, it's almost like this weight just gets lifted off of your shoulders. It's actually a relief because you've already got your intentions
Hmm.
mapped out, documented on paper, right? Now that's just the legal document side of it. The other part of it is the conversations, right?
Hmm.
That's actually probably more difficult than the legal documents, right? Because it's approaching those conversations. So, if it's just a couple, let's say a mom and pop, right, getting a simple will together and a simple estate issue, having that conversation is kind of like a one and done. We got it done, and we've got the legal documents done. But things change throughout your lifetime, right? We have deaths, adoptions, divorces, births, right? These are all life events that could change your intention on your legal documents, right? So that's always, it's really not a static thing. It's a dynamic thing that we go back and have these conversations over and over. Another aspect of this that still falls into legacy planning and estate planning is having that conversation with the generation above you, right? So, I just mentioned I'm 50. We're now at this age where my generation are either becoming caretakers, or there are certain aspects where we're having to step in and take on a different role than we've had to do in the past, right? Something we're uncomfortable with. Part of that caregiving or legacy talk is approaching that conversation with your elderly parents, right? Finding out if they have estate planning documents in place, what benefits do they have in place for their healthcare needs as they age. Sometimes, if there's cognitive disabilities or dementia or Alzheimer's, we're literally having to go in there and kind of take control of the finances and help them do things like paychecks and continuing, running the household, right? Some of those cognitive diseases, those chronic illnesses, they're very unforgiving. And so things that they did when they were younger, if it's not a family member who's having to step up, there's things that we may not have thought about that we have to get on our radar. But just having that conversation with them, sitting down, but
Hmm.
sometimes we facilitated that conversation, and it really depends on the family dynamic. But it could be as easy as just getting you and your siblings together and approaching this conversation with them. It could be having a neutral third party come in.
Hmm.
The opposite way, coming from the parents. The parents may have absolute line in the sand expectations of what they want from the kids, and they might be the one who raise their hand and say, let's have this meeting and let's put some guidelines in place. It may not even be about the money, right? A lot of times legacy could be about values and traditions and oral history and
Hmm.
things that they're passing on just through a conversation. But if you don't start that conversation, none of these things gets said, right? They're just kind of in the back of your head. They're not put out into the world. And so you're kind of leaving your family out there to kind of guess or speculate like what your intentions are.
Right. And that's the thing we constantly, I don't like this word, preach on this podcast, Lucy and I. We constantly talk about difficult conversations. Yes, they're uncomfortable, but they are the key to moving your relationship forward and deeper and getting things done. You have to be transparent. So I'll skip the legal stuff because that's beyond the scope of this podcast. But I'm wondering, were you always comfortable with these kind of conversations?
So no. So just like anybody else, discussing death is heavy and weighty, right? But what I found is, so I work mostly with retirees, so 55 and up, who are either 5 to 10
Mm,
years away from retirement, or after having done this for 20 years, they're already on the other side of retirement. They're taking distribution. And so my clients have aged with me. So, I was started in my 20s, I'm 50 now.
mhm,
And so they've aged right along with me. So I've had a good bit of my clients pass. I've had their spouses pass. So we're initially, the main thing that I was helping people do was just retire, right? You get signed up for jobs you didn't think you were you were going to do, right? Well, part of
yeah.
me helping them is helping them through this part of transition and through their lives. And where it does come into play, there's something called a widow's penalty, right? So if you are married, and you file your taxes, you're going to be at a lower tax bracket than other people, right?
Mm,
Than singles. So if you have a spouse that passes, this is literally the last year that you can file as married, filing jointly in that year. So I know a lot of people
mm,
give the advice, like, if you're a widow, don't go out and make financial decisions right away. That's generally good advice. But when it comes to that widow's penalty and your taxes, this may be a reason that you'd want to make some changes in that low tax bracket. So there's things that we can do on the finance and the dollar sign side, that's going to be a way that I can help, right? But the conversations, yeah, this is just something that as my clients have aged, we're realizing this is a super important thing to discuss with them. My company, Houston First Financial Group, we have a Houston HFFG legacy planning, which is a whole section where we help people with estate planning, but also caregiving. So just the idea
mm.
of falling into that new role that you're not used to. These are things that we've realized as the practice has grown, that this is really kind of what we were hired to do that we didn't know, and here we are. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me, I mean, if you can remember, what was those first few conversations where you suddenly had to start talking about this? Do you remember what that was like for you, or what was going through your mind?
Yeah, so it's all, as a financial advisor, and as you go through your practice, we are taught and trained to make sure that estate planning is a thing, that we have those
Okay.
conversations, right? But there's a difference between being younger and having those conversations. Hey, everybody should have a will in place. This is just a good thing at the general practice across the board, right? To actually having your clients pass away, right? Very, very different conversation. I'm very empathetic. I'm somebody like if you call me and your spouse passed away, is like, wow, okay, that's heavy, right? And so being put, I'm trying to think of some of the earlier ones. I mean, in when the pandemic came online, I had the most clients pass away in the course of the
Mm,
past 2 years than I had in the last 18 years prior to that. And that was just kind of the beginning of that age group, with that coming online. The positives of this are, I can see the gaps in the estate planning, and what people didn't do to prepare
mm,
themselves or their spouse. And I always use the lessons that I've learned from that on new clients or existing clients, and it's through real life experiences. But yeah, it's definitely, I'm to get I'm not going to name names because of
sure. Yeah.
confidentiality,
Please
right?
don't.
But yeah, but to get a call from a client, it's like, hey, Chris, my wife just passed. how does that affect us financially? From a financial standpoint, we have to do some restyling of the accounts. We can offer guidance in them, settling the estate, the finance part of it, but we also can provide some guidance on, how to have those conversations with the kids and what professionals you need to bring in and what things you should be approaching at this point and what things you should kind of put on hold or
Hmm.
pause, right?
Hey, Chris here. I really appreciate you listening to this podcast. And if you are listening to this podcast because you're looking to get better at these difficult conversations, well, if you really want to de-escalate difficult behaviors and you want to be assertive without being aggressive and being true to yourself, I have a self-paced course that can really help you, because I know it's difficult being assertive in lots of different situations. If you're at work and you have to give feedback, if you have to deliver bad news to an employee, or deliver bad news to somebody that you care about in your personal life, or you're struggling to deal with defensive or sensitive people who are pushing your buttons and you don't know how to push back. It doesn't have to be that way. There is a world where you can handle these tough emotions with confidence. You can speak honestly and kindly while you're still being assertive. And you have the ability to manage emotional outbursts and stubbornness calmly, because these are things that I've had to overcome and learn. And so this self-paced course goes through all of those things. I've created this trust framework that helps you think through how to prepare for and how to facilitate hard conversations. And you hear a lot of it actually in this podcast as I talk about how to handle difficult conversations in lots of different scenarios. Currently, the course is closed for enrollment. There's a waiting list. If you are interested in learning more, enrollment will open up at the end of August and the beginning of September. So please go to the website. I'll link it down below, and you can learn more about it and join the waiting list if you want to hear more about it. But I'd love to see you there.
One of the main things that we like to point out is no surprises. We don't like any surprises. I think when it comes to money, nobody is excited when
Yeah.
you get, usually surprises are bad, right? So things like Social Security, once somebody passes away, they can retroactively go back and pull Social Security from your spouse once they realize a date of death. But it's Social Security, right? It's like the IRS, right? They may not realize it until months have passed, but they darn well will go back and correct it and change. And that changes how
Hmm.
your budget is in your household, right? If you're used to budgeting from a two-person household, whether you're living off of Social Security or pension, and that
Hmm.
changes, we kind of help you prepare on the front end. Hey, here's what we need to be looking for, and that sort of thing. Even getting introduced to the children, that's the whole reason we do the legacy planning part, is because hopefully by the time we get to that point, we've already talked to the children at least a few times. I have the benefit of it being a family practice. So often the kids have already been introduced to us and we're helping them with their financial planning or their investments, right? But if we haven't, they may have called us once or twice in the past. And so having that relationship where the kids feel comfortable, like, hey, I know you've worked with my dad or you've worked with my mom in the past. Um, Having that uh,
Hmm.
relationship where they're not scared to pick up the phone and it's just another person getting lost in the numbers there. That's a huge part of it. It's, people don't want to feel that way when they're grieving and they're going
Yeah.
through this process. You want to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah. What are your, I know I appreciate you sharing that there is a difference between how you're taught to do it and then the real life experience of like sitting in the room with a person and they're like talking about this heavy topic or they're really worried about it. And has that impacted how you even talk to your own parents as they've gotten to that age and you're starting to have more of these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, my mom. So I've got a single parent mom, right? So my dad wasn't around, but as a single
Yeah.
parent mom, she's benefited from a lot of the mistakes
Oh,
that I've
good.
seen other people make, and so it is a positive thing to see patterns, right? When you're dealing with more than one person, a lot of what we call wisdom and experience is really just high level pattern recognition, right? So
Sure,
when we
sure.
when we see lots of this same thing happen over and over, to be able to kind of grab that experience and say, okay, I noticed this, and this is the right way to do it, and then to take that and to share that with others. So my mom's had the benefit of that, but I'm sure any other professional medical person would say the same thing. Sometimes that doesn't translate to your personal life across the board, right? So every family dynamic is different. But yeah, so that's, you know, one of the reasons I got started in retirement planning is my mom worked for a hospital early in her career, and she got her financial advisor guy was just an annuity guy. And so he sold her like a fixed annuity. And that was one of the things when I was of the age of reason. Once I figured out, you know, it's like, hey, wait, maybe this was not the best thing or the right thing, you know. That was one of the things that pointed me towards this career, because a lot of this is one of those topics or areas that people, you know, they just get kind of glazed over. They don't want to get into the details of it, and they'll make bad mistakes, right? So being able to have these experiences with my own clients, hopefully she's benefited from them. I'm knock on wood here.
When you talked about like creating that environment where that people are going to be safe or feel comfortable, and you're a lot of times you're an outsider by nature of the work you're doing. You're an outsider. You're not in the family, and I know that, like, yes, sometimes having an outsider helps kind of reduce some of that emotionality of that situation. But what's your personal tips of like how do you create that atmosphere of safety, of opening? Let's have an open dialogue and conversation. Like, what are your specific go-to tips?
Yeah, so I'm going to say that it's high trust. So, you know, I have the benefit of this being a family practice. So the whole idea around the practice is that we take in family trees instead of individual clients. And so that if somebody hires me, I'm doing a financial plan for that individual. But if they have children or they have parents, then that family tree is given the same financial advice and planning for like no additional cost. So that's why we take in family trees, right? So the benefit of that is like when you say, you know, you're not a family member. What's strange is that we're sort of, adopted family. I mean, I have families where I'm talking to the sisters, I'm talking to all three of the kids that have, you know, went from high school to college, and they're leaning on me for this advice because the parents trust me so much that they're saying, hey, you know, you need to talk to Chris before you make any decisions there. So when it comes, those conversations are easier because it's that high trust relationship there. I'm going to make the argument that if you're not doing that and you're seen as like an outsider or just another professional, it's either not going to happen or it's going to be very, very difficult for them to do that, right? So I was kind of planting the seed years ago when I started with these clients, and we just built these relationships up so that it just happens very easily now. Compared to I would even say if I just took a new client in and something like that happened, it's more and more difficult for them to open up and trust you, or even have you in their mind as this is the person I need to tap for this advice, right? So I guess what, you know, saying it out loud, time has a lot to do with it.
Sure.
You know,
Let's get really tactical though. I want to see, like, because you're right, trust, I agree totally, like in any kind of relationship, that's the key. What do you remember doing to build that trust?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably on this show, right? It's for difficult conversations. This is probably not the first time people have heard this. Active listening, you know, being a really, really good listener is crucial in this, right? You know, at the end of the day, when I sit and I do a discovery meeting with a client, really want to be doing about 20% of the talking compared to 80% of the client. It's going to be about them. If I'm doing my job correctly, then I'm asking those probing, open-ended questions to get them to really open up, right? You know, my practice is a value-based practice, and so, you know, part of my discovery process is that we go down Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and because I want to know what's important to them outside of the money, because they're going to be with me for years, and it's not whatever they say. It's not about the dollar sign or the numbers. It's always going to be something else. It's the same reason we get up in the morning to go to work or get into the office, right? We have very specific things that drive us. So being conscious of that in my process Okay, now that I'm saying it, I have a process. So that's very tactical. I have a very specific defined process that I use every time, repeatable, when I meet with a client. And so that I'm making sure that I'm touching those areas that are important. I'm listening. I'm making sure to keep track of that, and making sure that they're fresh on my memory when these things come up in the future as well.
It's interesting how much active listening cuts across like every type of profession that requires relationship and trust building.
100%. I'm still learning this. I mean, I was, at one point I was an HR trainer and I taught active listening, right? What's interesting is that now with technology, I'm using a software called Avoma that does, and it's similar to some of these other AI voice capture, note taking software that's out there. But what this one does different, it kind of records the entire meeting and it goes back and it tells you what percentage you talked versus the person that you're talking with. And it really, really, as for somebody who's also a leader, I've got staff here. If I'm having a meeting with my assistant and I realize that it's 80% me talking versus 20% her talking, not good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I am using some tools that are, I guess now that we're saying this out, I'm using some tools that are also, to this day, still it's a skill that you just get better and better at, and being open to learning and changing. And that's one of the tools that I've been using lately to help me with that.
Mm. The tool that I have here with us, Fathom, that's it keeps popping up every now and then, like how much is it am I talking, what percentage of the time?
Oh, nice.
It does the same thing. It tells me how much I'm talking versus the other person.
Nice, nice. I have heard Fathom. I haven't tried it, but I was on a webinar this week where it got mentioned in the top 3 of these types of programs out there. So I might have to check it out. So.
And I guess maybe I don't know if I'm allowed to even mention it, but it's free, right? Like if you go to the website, it's free for individuals. So great deal.
Yeah, yeah. Mine, I'm paying $24 a month for it, and the only thing that, well, there's a couple things, but it allows you to archive the actual video stuff. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because when I'm going back and doing a financial plan, I will go back to these recorded conversations and go to the key moments, right? So, a lot of times when you meet with a client, they're like, well, was he really listening? Is that stuff that's actually getting captured? Well, this tool that I have, it allows me to put keywords in there and go back and like, okay, what did she say about her parents? Every instance of her speaking about her parent comes up in there, and it's a very good time saver, and it's not detracting, it's adding. So I'm being more and more open to these types of tools.
Yeah. I'd love to know, what are 1 to 2 takeaways our listeners could have of just things they could think about to start doing to get comfortable talking about this with their own parents, or themselves, to start talking about this estate planning and planning for the inevitability of death.
Yeah, so we provide a guidebook of resources that kind of helps you approach this conversation. But without having something like that, just starting the conversation with your parents. You might use other examples of your people that are around you that have had similar situations and said, my friend Jane or my friend John had this experience with their parents. Boy, that wasn't good, or boy, that worked out okay, and here's why. And that might be a way to kind of test bubbles approaching the conversation, right? That doesn't work, be very direct. Tell them specifically why you're doing it. Often this comes up with somebody's financial plan, because if mom and dad maybe didn't have the best plan in place or aren't doing the right things, when some of the things that we mentioned earlier, like Alzheimer's or Parkinson, come online, this might be a financial responsibility for you that you didn't expect, right? So part of good financial planning is looking for all of those question marks and we plan for the best, or plan for the worst, hope for the best, right? But we want to get rid of all of those question marks and to be determines and unknowns. And so That's part of it, is literally bringing up that conversation. Some of the parents will be proactive and will tell you, right? If they have specific things they want to do with trust, or we've got people that, I want to leave a bequest behind for my children or even my grandchildren. I want them to, if they go to college, we're going to give them this much. If they don't, we're not going to give them anything, right? You can get into the weeds. You can really kind of dial this stuff in. You're the opposite of that, where there's been no planning at all. So the question that you had about those initial conversations, that's super powerful. That really just starts the flywheel going towards the positive direction, right? And even if it's negative, right? Even if they come back and say, "Who are you?" But I'm your mom, I'm your dad. Why are you asking this stuff? That was kind of the worst case scenario, right? Isn't it kind of good to know that early on? Right. If
Yeah.
there's some blockage there or some reason as to why they're not approaching the topic, what's the worst they can do? And if that comes up, that's probably the reason you should initiate it to begin with. You kind of want to know those things, right? So yeah.
Hmm. It, just a little bit. It's still related, but it's a little bit of a tangent. How do you approach families where the siblings might be fighting over kind of what they see as a fair share, or try to influence in some way, getting more or less or whatever? Just that the idea of, because
Yeah.
money makes everybody a little bit wild. So how do you
Yeah. Yeah.
approach those conflicts and those dynamics?
Yeah, so this is a huge issue, especially with the age group that I'm working with, right? So anybody who's over 55, if they have been married once, divorced, and remarried, there's a high probability that they have a blended family with children from one marriage and children from a second marriage, and then they're trying to put this together, right? They're trying
Mhm.
to put this household together, these finances together. So that's a recipe for hurt feelings, right? So,
Right.
so yeah, so for sure. So having one, just building the importance of how important it is to define those things. Even right at the beginning of this second marriage, when you're putting together two past lives into one financial household, sometimes they have uh, the idea that they're keeping separate finances because they've had some past mistakes with finances. So they put up this kind of firewall. But when it comes to the styling of the accounts and the estate planning side of it, we're in a Texas here where it's community property, right? So even some of the things that they do where they might think that they have independence by having separate accounts, the state doesn't look at it like that, right?
Mm.
So making sure that you have this discussion so that you know how all of those things work with the assets being distributed the way that you think that they should. And that's about intention, right? So intention, they have to say it out loud. They have to talk it out. The earlier, the better. We are not. I'm a certified estate and trust specialist, but I'm not an attorney, so I can't draft the legal documents. But our job is to quarterback it, bring it up, help them have that conversation, to facilitate the conversation. The end result is avoiding that kind of a family dynamic where people are fighting, right? If the parents want to give two things, not to be a financial burden to their family or to not be a source of contention, this is super important for them to do, because by them saying it out loud and putting their intentions in writing, anybody that's left here to grieve, they're not having to be a mind reader or speculate what the parents
Mm.
wanted, right? It's kind of written, it's defined, and then they're allowed to grieve and to focus on the emotional part of it, because this stuff's all happened behind the scenes. It's already done, right? It really shouldn't be shouldn't be a thing that we're still talking about after people pass and siblings argue. But every family's different. There's always a different dynamic going on. The earlier that you bring these conversations up, the better, because you get all of those things out in the open. It is interesting facilitating conversations with families like that. But it is, I'm sure from what you do as a living for a living, you've seen this kind of stuff, and it's super important for families to discuss this and bring that stuff up. Yeah.
Mm. Absolutely. Well, this is really interesting, Christopher. Again, I love this topic because I've been forced to get comfortable with it, and I just think it's so important. So, where can people find you? Where can people follow you if they want to learn more? If they want to just follow you and get in contact with you and your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So for my financial planning practice, it's www.houstonfirstfinancialgroup.com. But for the podcast that we've been over 10 years, I've got, even though Money Matters is probably one of the most common names for a financial advisor podcast out there, I have www.moneymatterspodcast.com. So I grabbed that one early and I can easily point people to that one. So that's the one I usually send people to. And I'm always encouraging people to subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's only come online for the last 2 years or so. So we're really trying to get that going as well.
Awesome. And we'll put all those in the show notes so everybody can follow along and access. But Christopher, thank you so much for being on this show. I really appreciate it. I love being on your show too.
Absolutely. I love it. We had such a great conversation on the show, a couple of weeks ago that I felt like this was a continuation of it. And I was very honored to be on your show as well.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Christopher.
All right. Have a good one.
Welcome to the art and science of difficult conversations. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lucy, and we love having difficult conversations. Let's get into it.
I'm excited that we have an expert. Even though I'm a therapist, this is not something that I've ever done or worked with necessarily. So I'm excited to have our guest today. So Randy, we are so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much. Hi. Yeah, this is going to be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I didn't share much about who you are. So, for the listeners, tell us about who you are and what got you here.
Absolutely. Yes. I had a 40-year career as a professional comedy entertainer on cruise ships and all over the place, right? Corporate shows. And being married for about 14 years, at one point we decided to get off the cruise ships because we were doing cruises for about 7 years in a row. We wanted to start a family. So we got off the ships and got some work at home and worked into it. And then I had about 3 places that I was working in, pretty consistent. And then all of a sudden, 2 of those closed. Like the entire club, they shut down. So I only had one place to play. So I dove into work and became, unbeknownst to me, became a little bit of a workaholic. And my wife said, "Hey, I need some help. We had 2 kids, and I was working too hard." And after 14 years of marriage, she finally pulled the plug and said, "Look, this isn't working for me. I don't love you anymore. I want a divorce." And that really got my attention. I said the same thing that most guys do. Well, I knew it was bad, but I didn't think it was that bad. Very common, right? So I dove into my church. There was a church across the street, and I dove in, and they had a support group to help men get through a separation, divorce, and it was so eye-opening for me because I found my faith and I let it all go. And I said, okay, what can I do? What can I learn from this? Right. So, and that was, by the way, this was like 15 years ago. And now my life is full of joy, full of peace, full of significance. And it's all because of things that I learned along the way. So I've been, I was in a support group and learned all kinds of stuff. And then 6 months later, into the support group, they asked me to become a leader. And I said yes. And that was 15 years ago. So I've been doing it every day, all the time for about 15 years now, because guys, we all have the same kind of issues, the same problems. We didn't know what we didn't know. We thought we were doing it right. So that's what I've been doing. That's my background.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, sure.
That's impressive. And I love many different things about your story. And sounds like your strengths I'm seeing really being able to pause at that moment, and rather than blaming, really looking at, how can I learn something from this? How can I change things? And also, I feel another strength that you actually allowed yourself to be supported and seeked out, where can I get support through this? And I think that's difficult for many people. So kudos to you.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, thank you. It's difficult because the world teaches us men, right, that if we ask for help, we're weak. And that's just silly. You're supposed to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps and all that stuff. And that's just junk, right? If I wanted to learn how to golf, I would ask somebody who teaches golf. If I wanted to learn anything, I would ask an expert in the field and go, okay, help. But for some reason, I don't know what's the deal, but almost all men, we think that it's some kind of weakness if we're not good in the relationship category. And that's just wrong. Are there resources? Of course. You know how you can tell? You go to any bookstore, you'll find all kinds of relationship stuff, right? And they're all for women because men don't buy books. There's hardly any resources for just men. That's why I support men. My entire program is based on helping men get through their separation, you know, and if the divorce is going to happen, okay, but it doesn't have to be life ending. It's not nearly as bad. It's painful, but there are things that you can do to make it a lot easier and ways to turn it around. And I'd be glad to share some tips on that.
Yeah. Randy, I'd love to go back and just to that moment of when your wife said that to you. I'd love to know, what are you thinking in the moment? What are you feeling in the moment? And how are you, even, what are you saying?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was devastated. I couldn't believe the pain. It was more painful than anything I've ever gone through. Like, I've had a kidney stone. I'd rather have another kidney stone than go through that again. It was unbelievably painful, mainly because I'm out of control. I thought I was in control, and now that's being taken away, and I have nothing to do with it. I have no say in it. You know, and I kept saying, well, can we talk? No. Well, can we work on it? No. Can we go to therapy? No. I don't know what to do if there's nothing I can do. Okay. So it seemed that way. It seemed like I had nothing to do with it. Well, it turns out I can do a lot of things. I just didn't know it at that time. But the short answer is devastation. That's what it felt like when she said, I don't love you anymore. I want a divorce. That was it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I got to be able to do something. I can't just sit here in the pain. Of course, it feels like it'll never get better, but it can and it will. In fact, I learned enough about it, and I've done it for so long that I wrote a book about it. It's called SOS Reconnect. And I'll even tell you what the SOS stands for. It's very simple, right? Straightforward. SOS. The first S is stop pushing her away. The O is open communication. And the final S is surround yourself with a godly group of men who can provide accountability and support. That's what works. Trying to change her mind doesn't work.
Yeah. You know, when you say like stop pushing her away, looking back, like during that time period, what were some of the things you were doing that were pushing her away without you even realizing it?
Yeah, trying to change her mind, trying to prove her wrong, trying to show her, oh, it can be better. Look at this, look at that. That's just me trying to be a good boy. And she knows no matter how long that I would be good and do all the stuff that wasn't working, right? She knows it's temporary because I've shown her for 14 years. We were married for 14 years. She'd ask me periodically, hey, listen, I need some more help. And I'd say, okay. And I would help for, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then it would slide right back in how it used to be. Standard pattern for most guys out there. We just sweep it under the rug. We don't really change permanently. We just get through it. And in my case, my wife could take it for about 14 years, and she finally said, no, I hope you become a great guy. That's wonderful for you, but I'm out. I can't do it. So my problem was I was pushing her away by trying to fix it, right? Because we're men. God gave us the logic and the need to fix things. It's in our DNA. That's how we roll as guys, right? That's what guys do. But that's not how we made women. They got the logic. We got the logic. They got the emotions and the nurturing and the intuition. All great stuff. No mistakes. But we look at life differently than they do, right? That's just how we're built. Okay. So in my mind, I'm thinking there's got to be a fix. There's got to be a way to change her mind. And all that did was push her away because I wasn't listening to what she was saying. So if you happen to be a listener, if you're watching right now or listening and you're separated, your wife is thinking two things. She's thinking, number one, I can't stand the way it is. Number two, I can't imagine that it will ever change permanently. Doesn't mean it can't change and get better. It means that right now she can't imagine it. And that's based on her personal experience with you. Can't do it. Not going to happen that way. Right? So her biggest fear this is legit. Her biggest fear when she asks for a separation, or, this is not just an argument, but if there's some kind of separation, her biggest fear is that you do change and you do become a good guy and you guys work it out and you get back together and things are wonderful for a while. And then they slide right back into how they used to be. That's her biggest fear. That's why she digs her heels in. That's why she says, no, we're not doing this. So again, and if you don't mind, I'll talk directly to the guys listening to this. And I know this is harsh, but here's the real deal. If there's a separation, an actual separation, your wife is not coming back to you. And I know that sounds harsh, but your wife is not coming back to you. She may go forward with you in a whole new relationship, but she's not going backwards. So that's why whatever you're trying isn't working, right? Trying to fix the marriage, offering to go to counseling, offering to work on yourself, joining a program. I'm reading a book. All that represents going backwards to her, right? Trying to repair the old, dead, irreparable marriage. That's why it's not working. So instead, stop trying to change her mind.
You had two really important gems in there that one we'll come back to later, which is she's been saying these things for a long time and you just didn't pick up on it. So like, it's not like it really isn't out of the blue. There's been hints all along. You just didn't pay attention. I'd love to come back to that later. And number two, a really important point, which is it's never going to be the same relationship again, no matter what, because you have to have a new dynamic, you're a new person, she's a different person. You have to be willing to be different. For you, when you went through that transformation, you started changing yourself because you are learning all new habits, all new ways of thinking and behaving. What was that transformation like for you in terms of having to confront these ill-informed patterns of behaviors that you had?
Yeah, it was easy to decide, but it takes a lot of practice to do it, right? Let's say for myself, I was selfish, I was a workaholic, and I was a control freak, and I didn't even realize it. Right? I wouldn't choose to be those things, but I didn't really see it. Okay, it took the separation and it took devastation to get my attention, right? Okay, this needs to change. So the decision is pretty simple. Okay, stop being a workaholic. Okay. How long does that take okay, the decision's instant. I won't be a workaholic. Okay, now what? Well, stop working so hard. Put it away at 5 o'clock or whatever you have to do, okay? But it can't happen for her. I can't change for her or even for the marriage. That's not sustainable. And she knows it. Right? Even if you're doing all kinds of great stuff, you're becoming a whole new guy and you're working on yourself and all that kind of thing. If you're doing it for her, eventually it will slide right back into how you used to be. So you can't do it for her. What you want to do is change your goal. Most guys come in, to my program with a goal. I want to get my wife back. They call it winning your wife back, right? That's what a lot of people on social media call it. I want to win my wife back. Okay. Yeah, it's possible, but that can't be your goal. When your goal is to win your wife back, she knows that as soon as she acquiesces to your request, it'll slide right back the way it used to be. So instead, say, okay, I want to become the best version of myself. In my case, Randy 2.0. Okay. That's the goal, the real goal. Now that's in my control, right? What she chooses to do or not do or think or feel or act, whatever, that's on her side of the street. I don't have anything to do with her side of the street at all. A lot of people say, well, marriage is 50-50. It takes two people. Okay. That's not correct. Marriage is 100-100, but you have nothing to do with her 100. That's it. You have no control of her, right? You can take full responsibility for your side of it. So if my goal is to become the best version of me, that's in my control. I can do that. That happens to be the single most attractive thing that I can do, right? Taking full responsibility for my side of it. Okay. It's not about changing her mind. It's about showing her who you can be, but not for her. And it'll take some time. That's why my program is 6 months long. It can't be done in a short time. If you've been married for any length of time, right? In my case, 15 or married for 14 years. Okay, she's got 14 years of experience with me, right? I have a 14-year track record. You think I can just become a good boy and turn a new leaf and all that kind of stuff in a couple of weeks? It's not going to happen. I've never seen it, right? And when I'm trying to convince her of my new change and my new this and my new that, I'm trying to convince her. What I'm saying and what she's receiving is, hey, by the way, you're wrong and I'm right. That's what it seems to her. So instead, for the gentleman listening, stop talking. That's it. It's very interesting. We're talking about having, good conversations. Okay. But when I say stop talking, I mean, stop trying to change her mind. Stop telling her she's wrong, basically. Instead, show her every single interaction we have, text message, email, phone call, person, live, one-on-one. Okay. You can do that by showing her that you're not trying to change her mind, that you're her biggest supporter, safest friend, right? And she can see the changes over time. That's what makes her curious. When she becomes curious, good things can happen, right? That's what that's about, right? Right now, she needs to be able to imagine that life with you could be better than it's ever been. But right now, she can't because you're still trying to backpedal and trying to talk her into something. And that represents you 1.0, right? Okay, stop it. I mean, I'll give you an example. One of our guys, one of our clients, his name's Randall. When Randall came to us, his wife had just asked him to move out. She was done. Can't do it. Please move out. And he didn't want to move out. In fact, his buddies told him not to. They said, if you move out, it'll look like you're abandoning the family. She'll never let you back. So we said, what should I do? And I told him, I said, look, you've got a golden opportunity here. You can demonstrate that you're going to put her first, or you can demonstrate that you're going to put you first. What do you want to do? And he said, I want to put her first. I said, okay, then you have to move out. So he moved out and he joined our program, and we just worked on him. Not the marriage, not the issues, just worked on him. And there were periodic texts back and forth. And about 10 and a half weeks later, he got a text from his wife. And all it said was, wow, I really like what I'm seeing and I miss you. Please come home. And they moved back home and they reconciled. They're doing great. Now he's one of my support coaches. That's how it works because, yeah, she could actually see it. It wasn't about, oh, please let me back. I'm begging you. No, she got to see it in action.
So sounds like the stop talking was more of start showing and talk that the action speaks louder than the words. And sounds like behind the action was also shift in focus rather than trying to control or blame the other person. Well, this is your fault, or you should change. You should see me differently. Rather than shifting the focus on, rather than trying to control somebody else and their thoughts and decisions. What can I change about myself? What can I control about myself? And you said something, becoming the best version of myself. And I'm curious, when you ask yourself that question, like, how would you know what is the best version of yourself?
Yeah, good question. A piece. There's a piece that comes over when we're doing it correctly. It's not forced. There's no stress about it. Everyone gets to choose who they want to be. Okay. I have changed. I'm not the same guy I used to be. I was all about making the money and making it happen because the world says, right, if you want to be a good husband, you need to be a good provider. Right? So we stress and we get money and we do it because that's what we're taught. Well, that's a piece of it. What we're really supposed to do as husbands, a good husband, I want to provide an environment where she can feel safe and secure all the time. Financially is one part of it, but that's all the guys learn. We just stop right there. Okay. So if it's starting to unwind, if it's not working, we scramble to try and change her mind. We try to fix the problem instead of fixing ourselves. So for me personally, you can't see it, but on the inside of my forehead, there's a tattoo and it says, how can I help? That's how I focus. How can I help? It's not about how can I change your mind? How can I make this work? Okay. And it's hard for us guys, especially for us men, because we don't get paid to be patient. If you're employed, You don't get paid unless you make something happen. So making it happen works for us everywhere else. That's why this is so hard. Letting go of control, it's actually an illusion. We don't have control, but we feel like we do. Letting go is not giving up. We just think it is. It's not. Letting go is letting go of the outcome, letting go of what she's deciding to do. Take full 100% control of your side of it and watch what happens. It's pretty amazing what can happen over a long period of time, right? So first you learn the new behaviors, then you practice those for a long time until they become habits, right? Once they become habits, that's when she can accept that this new thing is real because you're doing it for you, right? She'll hear about it, I promise. They always do. Wives will always hear about your progress, but you don't say, hey, look at me. I'm working on myself. I know we could get together. That's still more trying to get her involved. It's unnecessary. Every time you try and get her involved, it pushes her away. You can open communication. That's the O of SOS. Open communication. You can do that, but not by, we need to talk. That's the worst phrase ever, right? Stop talking about the relationship. Tell her. I have a lot of little phrases that I use to help me remember the concepts. Here's one of my phrases. If you'd like your wife to look at you differently, give her something different to look at. At least that's logical, right?
Nice one.
You can't talk your way out of things that you behave yourself into. You can't. So listen more. You want to listen, active listen, not like, okay, I'm listening. Okay. You guys have probably already heard this, but I agree with Stephen Covey when he says most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. I did that for 14 years. I was figuring out the answer while she was telling me or describing the issue, which meant for 14 years, I was never really listening to her. Yeah, that doesn't work. So if you want, I can give you a couple of good phrases to start things going, right?
Well,
Like
let me, I'd love to just acknowledge what you're saying is,
Sure.
It reminds me of a therapy client I have who's working on communication with his wife, because he's not saying much. And we went through one scenario where what he thought he was saying to her was totally different than what she was receiving. And it was very clear, even from him describing it, it was very different from what he thought it was saying. And once we got to that point of him realizing, oh, that's not what she heard, he started like immediately thinking of every other conversation. He's like, am I doing that at work too? Am I doing that everywhere? Like the light bulb went on, like, oh, I'm doing this wrong everywhere. I gotta stop doing this habit of mine. Right. So I love that you brought up because I was going to ask you, what does that open communication look like? What are some specific things that are helpful to really create that dialogue as opposed to just pressure or monologuing?
Right. And you said it, pressure. We have to be very careful because in the beginning of a separation, that took a lot of effort for her to, let's say, move out or ask you to move out. Right? That took a lot of effort. That wasn't a snap choice. She's been thinking about this for a long time. Okay. So in the beginning, it's going to be very difficult. So I would highly recommend give her space. Give her space. Okay. Giving her space is not ignoring her, right? It's absolutely incorrect when people say they tried like the no contact technique. That's crap. Sorry. She's your wife. Don't ignore her. Giving her space is not ignoring her. It's just not bugging her about the relationship. Leave her alone. If she has a question, answer it. Talk anytime she wants to talk about something. But when you bring it to her, it's pressure. Hey, I know we can figure this out. I know we can make it work. Right? My counselor, my people, my pastor, whatever, they've told me that we need to work on it. Oh my gosh. That's pure pressure. 100% pressure. And I've never seen it work. I have been doing this for 15 years. I have never heard a wife say to their husband, oh, honey, you're right. Thank you for showing me the error of my ways. Says no wife ever, right? Okay, she's got her own perspective. She really does. She has her own perspective of everything. everything. So if you want to open communication, first give her space. If she asks questions, great. In the meantime, work on yourself. But you never say, we need to talk. Don't say that. You can give her what I call lean in invitation. Hey, can I get some feedback on something? Can I get your opinion on something? Can I run something by you? Can you help me? Those are all 1,000% better than we need to talk, right? Because when you say, can I get your feedback on something? They lean in. Can you help me? Right? It's more of a lean in. It's more, I guess it's just easier to, let me run something by you. I was thinking blah, 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 blah. What do you think? Okay. End your conversations with, what do you think? Or what do you think of this idea? Or here's what I was thinking. What do you think? Guys don't do that. For the most part, here's how it should be. Okay. And the wives are tired of it. They're just done with that. They're not being heard. Okay. Your wife needs to feel heard all the time. And if she's telling you something that's important to her and you just give her an answer, doesn't feel heard. After a while, she'll just stop bringing it to you. That's how we get into it. So the first thing you want to do is get healthy before fixing the issues. You get healthy first, right? That's how it works. It's the only way that I've ever seen it work. It does work. I mean, it works really well. I'll give you another example. Another one of our guys, his name is Paul. His wife was in an active affair, meaning not only did he know about it, but she put it on the calendar when she was going to go away for the weekend, on the family calendar. I'll be gone this weekend. And he's out of his mind in pain.
That's super active. That's
right. It's active. And he's going, what do I do? How can we? Okay. So he came to us, joined the group, and we worked on him. We said, okay, look, it won't do any good to say you're doing something wrong. The Bible says that you shouldn't do this. How's that working for you? Right? Don't do that. So instead, again, we just worked on him. And every time she'd leave for the weekend, they had a 7-year-old daughter. Okay. So they'd have daddy-daughter dates, right? He'd take her to pancake breakfast and they'd have a great time for the weekend. He became a really great dad. Super. And when he was ready, when he was healthy enough, we gave him the words how to bring this up. He said, hey, listen, can I run something by you? And she said, yeah, what's up? He said, yeah, this whole situation isn't working for me. So I found an apartment not too far away because I still want to, see the kid and all that kind of stuff. And she said, hang on a second. I've noticed your changes, but how do I know that it's permanent? And he gave her the correct answer, which is, well, I really like my new direction. I have every intention of staying this way. I've got a group of guys that I've surrounded myself with and a network of friends. So I intend on doing this, but I understand if that's not working for you, I'm fully prepared to move on. And she said, hang on. I picked up the phone, called the other guy, called it off, and they reconciled. And they are doing great. Doing great because she got to see it. Remember that 10 and a half weeks? All he was doing was working on himself, not bothering her about it, not telling her she's wrong. He knows that. But instead, 100% him, he became the best version of himself. All 2.0. That's how it works. And they're still doing great. I just talked to them a little while ago.
Fantastic. It also brings up additional dimension, what you said at the beginning, that guys are very rational. Get it done, fix it. Now, women, of course, we are generalizing here. Also, both of us have always combination. But let's say the emotional part of the relationship. And one of the words that, we talk about a lot in communication, even leadership, is the trust. And sounds like the trust kept being broken again and again. When the guy made a promise, I'm going to change. It lasted for 3 weeks. Then it went back. And so change in that behavior sounds like is speaking, of course, louder than the words, because the words has been said before. But now really the change in that behavior kind of rebuilds that trust in the relationship. And sounds like also what you help your clients to really increase that self-awareness, both self-awareness and also awareness of their wives and of her feelings. even they might be uncomfortable with the emotional part, but actually becoming more comfortable and being more inviting rather than telling her what to do or what she should do, shouldn't do. Really consider her as more of a equal partner and being inviting rather than let's get things done here.
Right. Yeah, let's do it my way.
Let's co-create rather than do it this way.
Sure. Yeah, that's the only way it works. I've never seen it work any other way. But it does work. I mean, when you become the best version of yourself for yourself and not to fix this issue, that's really attractive, right? And he's going to continue. All my guys, they're going to continue because it works. That's what works. I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to read good books. I'm going to watch the right videos. I'm going to attend the right meetings. I'm going to do the right stuff, not for her, because that's temporary. And a lot of times, especially in the beginning, a guy will say, well, how do I get her to trust me again? That's really easy. Become trustworthy. Don't focus on her. Don't focus on what she is and isn't doing. Focus on you. I have control of me. Okay. So I can be supremely trustworthy. Okay. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Start with little micro promises that you can always keep. I'll be there at 7:00. You're there at 7. No excuse. Nothing. Build on that. Start with something simple, right?
I love that you highlight over and over again, like the lack of identity of men truly in our at least in the Western society. I'll say Western society because I only have the US point of view, but the fact is a lot of men define themselves, I'm a husband or I'm a father or I'm a work here or I do this by their titles, right? Like they are identified based upon their relationship with others as opposed to who am I? Who am I for myself? How do I show up for myself first? How do I be who I want to be? As opposed to how do I fit these specific roles and do these specific things in my life?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not about just doing what you're supposed to do. We all get to choose who we're going to be. Who do I want my friends to see when I show up? Right? Do I want to be known as being successful? Is that my number one goal? I want to be successful. That's what it used to be for me. Right? Okay. That's not my number one. I want to be helpful. I want to be encouraging. I want to be supportive. I want to be safe. Those aren't normal goals for guys, right? I want to be successful. I make a lot of money. I have a big house. I have all this stuff. I had all this stuff. I did. My wife and I, big house, cars, kids, everything. I lost it all. And I am 1,000% happier now than I've ever been because it's not based on that. My happiness is not based on the stuff that I can accrue. That's not it at all. It's about how I choose to show up, right? And if I can be helpful, if I can be supportive, yeah, that's what works. That's what works. And I didn't know that until I found a support group. So, because support groups for guys, that sounds, I mean, all we see on TV is a bunch of dudes in some basement. And we're going, I'd rather drink my own bathwater than go to that. Yeah, okay. Okay, I get it. But you'd have to go to one to realize that's not what it's like at all. In fact, it's more like what we're doing right now. We're on Zoom, we're talking to each other. That's what it is. But in my program, it's a bunch of guys, separated husbands who've already gone through it, found healing, and are helping the other guys. So they're either going through it, you're in a group of guys who've already gone through it or who are going through it currently. And you instantly feel better because you're not alone. We're just regular guys talking and we have answers because personally, I've made all the mistakes. You name a mistake, I've probably made it, right? I was too this, too that, not enough this, not enough that, trying to change her mind, all that kind of stuff. So there is a way. There's even a way to open up communication. If you've got a minute, I can explain it to you.
Well, actually, I don't want to miss this other point is, I agree with you 100% on like the importance of the community and support and accountability. I think those are really useful. I know you come from a Christian background, so that infuses into how you're doing it. What do you suggest, or what resources do you suggest for guys who don't identify as Christian?
There's a lot of good stuff on online. There's a lot of good books out there. There's just a ton of resources out there if you know where to look, right? So I would say go to Amazon and look up books about relationships that are written by men for men. There's quite a few out there. I don't have a lot in that world because that's what brought me to Christ. I considered myself Christian, but I wasn't really active. I wasn't really into it until they got my attention with the divorce. And I said, okay, I don't want to do it my way anymore. I want to do it your way. What does that look like? So, and in my experience, that's what does work, because doing it on my own, under my own power, yeah, how's that working for you? By the time that happened, I was 50 years old. And it turned out I was a 50-year-old boy, just doing what I thought was best. I can prove it. Look at my house. Look at my cars. I can prove that I was successful, but I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
But there's lots of resources out there. I mean, ours is faith-based. My program is absolutely faith-based. But there's a lot of people that learn a lot from it, even from my book, which is like $5. That if they don't like that aspect of it, okay, you can still glean a lot of what to do and how to do it. There's a lot of that in there that just makes perfect sense. It makes logical sense when you think about it. So,
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah,
That
just
answer the
to know that
question?
there are guys looking for those are guys looking for accountability or support groups, I should say.
Yeah,
that may
they're
not
out there.
identify as Christian. So
Yeah, there's other groups out there. If they would just want to support an accountability group, I'm sure there's others out there. Look for, just put accountability group or support group in there and Google and see what comes up.
Awesome. So yeah,
Yeah.
so you were going to share that other communication tips.
Oh yeah. There's a thing that I started 15 years ago. Little extension of my story. My wife was not only done, but we had 2 kids, littles, and they were very much on mom's side. Didn't want to be with me at all. To the point where they finally asked her, do we have to go see dad? We don't want to spend any time with him. So our relationship just fell apart. And in the beginning, I was all about, oh, you should be with your father 50% of the time. I love you. I miss you. Pressure. Right? Now, since they were like 9 and 11, of course, they had cell phones already. Of course, it's like the law by that age. I used to work at Disneyland in Anaheim, the original. And so when the kids were very young, like 0, we would take the kids to Disneyland. And then it became something for me and the 2 kids, right? It was just the kids and I. And that was a fun time. Taking them to the park, having worked there, I knew the place really well. But now we're separate. Now the kids don't want to talk to me. I said, okay. So I was at Disneyland one time by myself, just walked around the park. I went all the way to the end. There's a little area called Critter Country. And I went to the very end of it, turned around, and I noticed that there was no signs anywhere that said Critter Country. Kids kind of know Disney pretty well. So I took a picture of it and I texted it to both of my kids. And all I said was, where am I? Within 5 minutes, I got a text back. And my oldest said, you're in Critter Country. Come on, Dad, you can do better than that. Oh, it was on. For the next 2 hours, I played a game with my kids, and all I did was take a picture and send it to them. And they would have to guess where I was. And it got all the way down to like taking a picture of a little decoration on a wall, and they would nail it. And it was fun. That's when I realized it's not about the pressure of, oh, I miss you. I love you. We should talk more, blah, 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 blah. It's all pressure. So I developed something called reconnecting, and it's reconnecting using text, but it's not about texting the way that we normally think of it, right? We think texting is a two-way street. It's for engagement. Okay, we're not going to use it that way. We're going to use it as a delivery system, right? So reconnecting text, there's some rules to this. Number 1, a reconnecting text needs to be specific and personal. Number 2, no pressure. And number 3, frequency. How often do we do this? Okay. I'll give you an example of a reconnecting text. Let's say that my wife is into roses, right? She loves gardening roses. Okay, then specific would be what kind of roses? Well, her favorite are, I don't know, blue roses. Okay, great. So if I went to Google and I went to, let's say, Google News, because that's where they have all the articles and nobody goes there. So you go to Google News and you put in blue roses. What comes up are all these articles, these fresh articles that are all about how to garden blue roses. And as a good husband, I would flip through them. I'd look at the articles real quickly, put maybe 5 minutes of effort into it and go, I'm not done. Oh, wait, this one right here. This one's got photos and a nice little article. She's going to love this. I grab the link to the article and I text it to her. But all I say is, check this out. That's it. I don't say, here, I found an article about roses. I think you'll like it. And that way you'll like me again. Don't be stupid. Don't force it. Just a link to something that you know she'll like. Okay. Now she gets a text. Because right now when there's a separation, generally speaking, if you send her a text, her phone kind of dings or lights up. It's got your name on it. She goes, what does he want now? Right? Okay, we got to fix that. Here's how. Stop sending her pressure stuff. She gets a link and she says, what's this? Click. And now it's about an article about gardening blue roses. Very specific, very personal. Depending on your relationship, that might be very welcome. Interesting. Okay. That was about her, something she enjoyed, but you didn't say a single word about, hey, can we talk? Pressure, right? No pressure. Don't say, I miss you. I love you. Don't. You don't need to, because you can't send someone a text without thinking of them. So what you're really saying is, I am thinking of you, but without the pressure. Sorry, Lucy, you had a question?
Yeah, so it sounds like that actually, it almost seems like instead of focusing on my needs, I need you, I miss you, I want to speak with you, we need to have the conversation about me. It's more about, what does she like? Kind of having that empathy, practicing that empathy power. What would she appreciate? What does she care about? And really making that about the other person and showing that love and care rather than wanting it, or I need something from you. So it sounds like there's a switch. And I have a question, because in the past you've mentioned, about the patience. The guys, we are not paid to be patient, we are paid to get things done. And now it's more of like an approach of, I'm not asking, I'm just being there for her, I'm just showing care for her. What happens? It's kind of more patient approach, seems like. It's so what happens? How would you say the guys should respond when they get, okay, now I am getting angry, I'm not getting the response from her that I want? How to navigate that stage? What would be some of your tips?
When you yeah, absolutely. And guys do that. They expect a response. Okay. Well, that's a clear indication that you're not ready to reconcile with your wife. You have work to do. If you still have feelings of anger or resentment, clear indication you're not ready. You will not be coming back to that. Okay. So we help guys get through that. We can, channel our energy somewhere else, usually in learning more about ourselves. Right. But when it's an outreach. Okay. But one of the things we have to be very careful with is that expectation of a reply. I sent her something nice. She didn't even say thank you. Okay. So what you're saying is you sent her something nice to get a specific response. You're not ready. That's not it. It's not about engagement. It's a delivery system. It's like a little gift, a little present. Okay. And then you give her some time. Right. The third rule is frequency. How often do we do this? Well, if you're doing this, if you're butting heads and things aren't good with you, don't send her one of those every day. That's a full court press. It will feel like a technique. It'll feel like you're trying to get something from her. Give her space. You can send her an article, a link to an article, a photo. If you guys have kids, as an example, let's say that you go into your phone, you got a ton of photos. You go back to the very beginning when your kids were very small, and you find a photo that you're not in. Just a picture of the kids or the kids and mom, right? Grab the photo, text it to her. But all you say is, look what I found. That's not a question. You don't need a response. But I don't know very many parents who wouldn't want to see a picture of their own kids even if it's already on their own phone. You know what I'm saying? You nailed it, Lucy. You said it's more about her. It's all about the other person. And what I say to my clients, my guys, you want to do this reconnecting texting idea. You want to send a reconnecting text every single day, but not to her. You send one to your wife one day, and then one to, if your kids have a cell phone, one to them, then another one to a buddy, then a friend, and a coworker. You get really good at the reconnecting. Okay.
Mm.
And it's not about getting a response or reply.
Mm.
It'll most likely happen organically, right? And you'll know if she replies with a thumbs up or a heart emoji or a thank you, great. Then you can do it maybe twice a week, right? In the beginning, once a week, twice a week maximum.
Randy, I love this approach because you're also bringing in, like, it's not just about her, it's about how do you be a good person to everybody, how do you build that relationship. And with your wife, or even ex-wife, if you're divorced at this point, it's you're thinking about how do I essentially go into that dating phase appropriately now. Like, even if I didn't do it correctly the first time, how do I do this correctly? Like, I'm not gonna text somebody I just met like every day, because that would be nonsense, right? But I would just do things to start building that rapport. Randy, I really appreciate everything you've been saying. I love it. I wish we could. I would love to have you talk about come back and talk about infidelity too, because I think that's another important topic that comes up a lot. But if somebody I don't know why, but let's say they only tuned into this episode right now, 45 minutes into the episode, and they missed everything else and they don't want to rewind because the way their system works, what are 1 to 2 takeaways that they should take away from everything you just shared with us?
Absolutely. If you want to fix the situation, if you've been kicked out, or your wife has left or whatever, and they really want to fix it, the first thing you want to do is let go of the idea of changing her mind. That's just off the table. That will not work. I've never seen it work. What does work is when you decide, I'm going to become the best version of myself that I can possibly be. And that's in our control. Okay. In fact, I mean, if you like, for your listeners, I would love to offer a free reconnection planning session, a personal one, a one-on-one. If they want, you can just go to my website, go to randypryor.com. And then click on that and you'll find a place where you can get a free reconnection planning session. Because my heart goes out to anybody who has to go through this. It's awful. And we don't know what to do. So the first thing is give up the idea of changing her mind or fixing the issues or telling her what you're doing to fix it. Or even, hey, I'm in a group now, I'm blah, blah, blah. Let that go. Because this is much more important than your marriage. This is what we call legacy stuff, right? If you've got kids, now is the time. They're watching you right now more than ever. What's he going to do? What's dad going to do? Am I going to be okay? Depending on their age, of course. But we can pass this stuff down to our kids, and they're going to pass that down to their kids, right? So we can help their marriage when they get married. So it's much more valuable, much more important than just us.
I love that focus on the future and the role modeling. It's not just about you if they have kids. It's about what are you role modeling? Even if it doesn't work out, you're still role modeling how to be a good person.
Absolutely.
Randy, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask what ended up happening with you and your wife.
We became really good friends. She was absolutely done. And in a lot of cases, I waited too long to reach out for help. Remember when I said I made all the mistakes? My mistake was I waited too long. Were there therapies we could do, couples counseling, marriage retreats? Of course there were. I just said, I don't need that. I'm fine. I'll be good. Okay, so I waited too long. So it took a while, but we became friends. And now, and I know this is not a goal for anybody, and this is kind of odd, but not only are my ex-wife and I really good friends, but her husband is one of my best friends. We've become really, really close friends. In fact, whenever I fly back to Kentucky to visit them and the kids, I always stay with them. And it's not only not awkward, it's awesome. And I get it. In the beginning, if you're fighting, nobody wants that. I don't want to be a friend of her. I want to be your husband. Oh, okay. Okay. I get it.
Yeah.
And again, it took a couple of years to get there. But now my former spouse and I have a presentation that we do at churches about forgiveness.
Mm.
It's healthy. My kids are now, oh my gosh, it's my oldest daughter's birthday today. She just turned 25. Yeah, happy birthday. Yeah, and my youngest turns 23 in 2 months. So, I mean, it happens fast. Kids grow up so fast.
Yep.
But now they don't have what happens normally in the world is parents hate each other, the divorcees, all that. I can't believe she did that. She's so bad. It's all her fault. Oh, okay. How's that working for you? Stop. It doesn't have to be that way. It's so much better to demonstrate what it can be, right? So much better for the kids. And now they can take that to their soon to be spouses and is it spouses? Is that spice? Not sure.
Space.
But yeah, space. It's better for everybody. And it certainly is a lot more peaceful. I know it doesn't seem like a goal for us guys is I want peace. No, I want what I want. I want my wife back. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But really, peace, significance, joy, much better.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing there's also a shift about the goals, not just
Yep.
I want to have this, but how do I want to feel? How do I want to show up? And what kind of impact legacy I want to create? And sounds like not just for your family, that you're creating that impact and contribution also for your communities, anywhere you share this. That a new vision of what life after this painful event can be. And that it still can be a friendly relationship and even contributing to each other and role model even for your kids. How
Absolutely.
relationships can be peaceful.
Yeah, it's much more important than getting what we want. Much more important. And really attainable when you change your focus to what can I do? How can I be the best version of myself? That's the bottom line.
Love that.
Beautiful.
Lucy, any other last thoughts?
Just thank you. Thank you for sharing your time and your experiences with us, for actually even being vulnerable. Because I know for a lot of men, that is something no, especially in our culture, right? But you sharing about your mistakes and about your journey, but even about the pain, actually can really help all the men, guys there, even maybe women listening, that are going through something similar, or thinking, oh my God, maybe I should really think about my marriage. Is my spouse happy? Actually, also on the emotional level there. I should get help sooner rather than it comes to this point. So really thank
Reach
you.
out.
Appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, Randy. We'd love to have you back and talk about infidelity too. That'd be great to talk about that.
Love to do it. Love to do it. Looking forward to it.
Deal.
Thank you, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Randy.
Thank you.
Randy.
Hey, a big thank you to our guest, Randy. If you are interested in learning more about him, if you're interested in that free consultation, if you're listening, please check the links below. I'll put all his information down there. Again, if you are also interested in just building your skill sets, remember that I have a course. I'll put the link down below. It's not open for enrollment right now, but you can get on the wait list for when I update stuff, because I like adding stuff in like this. We'll put in role plays around this kind of stuff as well. But if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, please please subscribe, please comment anything, leave us a review. Let us know what we can do to make this podcast even better, what topics you want us to cover. Even as he was talking, I was thinking, oh man, I would love to talk about other types of relationships other than just heterosexual relationships. I think it'd be great to get viewpoints of all different types of dynamics, I think, because it affects everybody. So as he was talking about, the wheels in my head were turning, so I'd love to get into that. So again, please subscribe, let us know what you think, and we'll see you next week.
Welcome to the art and science of difficult conversations, where we really truly believe when you communicate better, we can live better. I'm Chris, your host, and as always, I'm joined by Lucy. Well, Lucy, I'm excited about today's guest. I'm excited about today's topic.
Me too.
So for those of you that are in the States, if you're listening to this live, also you can listen to it whenever. But we're in the middle of election season, as it always seems like every day is election season, more and more so. But we're in the middle of the actual election season for the president of the United States, and so with that comes a more and more polarizing and engaging, aggressive topic for people to discuss. It seems like people are just getting more and more angry. So we're really honored and humbled that we have a guest today that can really help us talk through, like, how are we going to have these conversations? Because boy, I struggle a little bit with these at times, other than just the active listening stuff. But how do I actually move it forward? That's not my forte. And I'm excited about this guest because Lucy, I think I've only briefly mentioned it, but I used to do Kung Fu for many years. And at the Kung Fu school, this guy was actually my Kung Fu brother. We were in the same Kung Fu family together. So I'm happy to have you here, Chris Gaggy. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and it's wonderful to see you, Chris. Lucy, it's wonderful to meet you. Longtime listener, first time caller, and I'm really glad to be talking about, like, how do we have these difficult conversations around politics, particularly in like specially charged times like election season. Yeah.
So Gaggy, can you tell us? Oh, just so everybody knows, we're going to call him Gaggy, just because two Chris's is very confusing. Really,
I would be so confused.
But Gaggy, tell us, kind of give us a brief history. How'd you get here? Who are you? How'd you get to where you're at?
Yeah. So my journey is a little convoluted, like a bunch of people. So I started my career as a teacher. I taught freshman and sophomore English, and then that was kind of one of my first forays into difficult conversations. How do you communicate with students? And then I bounced around the country a bit for different things after that, from grad school, where we met in Boston, to really the bulk of my work, which has been in politics itself. So for how many years was that? It seems like all of the years, but from 2013 to 2015, I worked in the marriage equality movement on campaigns in Rhode Island, New Jersey, Indiana, and then eventually became the statewide campaign manager for Ohio's campaign. And then after that, I worked briefly with the ACLU. And then after that, I worked at an organization where I recruited and coached teachers, current and former teachers, to run for elected office. And so kind of help them also navigate what could be difficult, even political conversations around public education and the issues that their communities faced. Now I work with Navy Federal Credit Union on their diversity, inclusion, and belonging team. And I get to coach a lot of wonderful people to think about how do we provide our best service, understanding that we might not have to agree on everything, but one thing that we do agree on is making sure that our members get the best service possible.
So you haven't really done anything, I would say.
Yeah, it's just a couple things, you know.
That's really impressive. You know, I'm interested. What drew you to politics and that realm?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. After my program, I was kind of looking around at the different things that I liked doing, and it was by and large leadership development. And so I was trying to see, like, okay, so if I wanted to do this professionally, what needs to be true? And for the different jobs that I applied to, they kept on saying, wonderful grad degree, but it's not in the right area. So I was like, I've got to go back to school again. So I applied to a bunch of programs, and then needed to find some kind of job to hold me over within that, or between the window of when I graduated and when the new program started. And I saw that Rhode Islanders United for Marriage was hiring paid canvassers. So this issue is extremely important to me. I like walking around. I kind of like talking to people. So I figured, this was a really good opportunity. Plus, it was a campaign, so it was going to be a short-term thing. And when I started, it was like something clicked in me, like being able to talk to people, hear their authentic stories, helping people share why the issue is so important to them, to the people that they love, to their community. And it was really in that moment that I saw, this is the real power of talking to people, of engaging in difficult conversations and bringing people together around shared values. So I said thanks, but no thanks to the other grad program. And then that's when I started to bounce around from Rhode Island to New Jersey, Indiana, Ohio, and so on.
That is pretty cool. And I can definitely resonate with bouncing around, bounce even across the ocean. And I also started my journey as a teacher. So we have more things in common, that's for sure, for high school students. And so, yeah, I, from teacher turned business owner to now coach. And I see that you have the curiosity and compassion and really go deeper in your conversations. And some people don't want to go deeper. Because it takes some patience also, and courage and openness. But what I'm hearing from what you shared, really bringing people together, discovering the values, that takes a lot of patience and openness and courage to have those conversations. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it took a lot of practice because nobody is born with these skills. But I think that at the end of the day, when we're able to arrive at a mutual understanding that's based on shared values, that's truly how we build community and bring more people together.
Were you raised in an environment that talked about politics or these kind of socio-political issues?
Kind of. So my father is a police officer and my mom a nurse, and she got her sort of beginning in infectious wounds and trauma care. And so engaging in frank and authentic conversations around like the different issues happening, particularly in Los Angeles, particularly in the 80s and 90s, it was something that we couldn't really escape. And so I would say like one of the key things that I picked up from that is that we all individually have our own perspectives, even the same exact situation, but that's the only perspective we can ever have unless we're open to hearing how it's impacted other people. So I guess that's kind of one key takeaway. I wouldn't say we necessarily like actively engaged in like, what do you think about all of these different things? But it was still pretty commonplace to be like, hey, so the news is on, we're all listening to it. What resonates with you from that? And it's actually kind of funny too, as I'm thinking about it, how I started my political career as a paid canvasser. And actually one of my earliest memories is canvassing with my mom for, I forget which election, it must have been 92, Clinton 92. And it was like a get out the vote, like, hey, are you making sure that you're voting? And so she kind of brought me along. So it's kind of an interesting, fun memory. Yeah. I've got to call her up after this.
We're saying hi to her.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just send her this episode. It's okay.
Yeah.
So from your experience, your vast experience, I mean, I'd love to be interested. Like, what makes these conversations so hard, especially in the workplace where there's sort of decorum about how we're supposed to treat each other already, but what makes it so hard to even talk about politics or share these differences?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so there are three big things that happen around political conversations that make them difficult. There's sort of the neurobiological processes that are happening. There's some psychological processes. And then, of course, there's just the social context within which these conversations happen. But it kind of boils down to like two big things. The sense of being included, like belonging to a group, the feeling of exclusion or being an outsider. And then I would say the feeling that we get when we think we have the right answer or the correct answer versus having the wrong answer. So like something that happens with our brains, like when, like, so we just share like all of our different connections with each other because it feels good to be a part of a group. In fact, that connection activates the reward centers of our brain. So like we're feeling that like good feeling. And whenever we feel the experience of exclusion, these same parts of our brain that process physical pain also light up when we feel exclusion. So it literally feels bad. It hurts to be excluded, right? So like on the social side, that's why we're more drawn towards similar groups, to people who have similar feelings, similar beliefs, and we don't like to feel like we're the outsider. Now, when it comes to like the idea of having the right or the wrong answer, it also feels good to have the right answer. Like think back to being in school when you knew you had that answer. It was just like, yes, I got it. Yes. And then when you get the wrong answer, it's like, oh, what happened there? How did I get the wrong answer? And kind of depending on the way that your viewpoints are, like how you frame the conversations, like growth versus fixed mindset, that can very much impact how you interact with other people. So that's sort of like one big on the one hand. So there are all of these processes taking place. And then, so when it comes to political identity, and here I'm just going to be very specific with the disclaimer, American political identity, which is also a very well-studied area. So, and I'm definitely not the spokesperson for all of that stuff, but what's kind of happened over, I would say, the last 40-ish years, but certainly well before then, I think, the way that political identity in America gets formed and centralized in conversations, I think is also something that, to our detriment, impacts the way that we engage in political conversations. And I'm using scare quotes there. So with the sort of formation of these identities, it's really more along the side of beliefs. So here, I think Adam Grant has a really good section on this. Like a belief is something that I think is true, versus a values-based identity, which is something that I think is important. And so when so if our identities are really rooted in a belief, any kind of information that is contrary to that belief is perceived of as an attack. Like, I think that this is the absolute truth. So if I get any information contrary to that, I'm already going to be in attack mode or defense mode. And so what happens there is of course, we get our fight or flight instincts. So like we lose the ability of our prefrontal cortex to process some of these higher level thinking if it's already perceived of as an attack. Whereas if it's based in values, like what I think is important, then if we get different or contrasting information, it's not a matter of being right, it's understanding how to do what is right because of this new information. So again, when our identities are, particularly our political identities, are rooted in that belief that I think this is the truth, then we have that sort of social connection. I'm going to be in group with other people who think that this is true. We don't want to feel excluded from that group. So even if we might think something slightly different, or if we get information that might be contrary to the overall group consensus, we're going to fall into social conformity and discount our own beliefs in favor of the larger group. And again, kind of depending on the feeling of psychological safety within that group and our own experience with growth mindsets. So that's kind of why these conversations from the get-go can be extremely difficult. And then kind of on top of that too, what other contributing factors outside of our own brains that kind of make this a lot more difficult is just looking at how political discourse has changed over time, from person to person conversations to now we're on the internet behind message boards. We're more interested in scoring talking points or telling points than having in-depth conversations with other people. We also see that too with political punditry. It looks and feels so good for somebody on your side, whatever side that is, to ask the gotcha question, like, oh, got them, and because they got them, and because we share this identity, that feels good for me too. So it's sort of like activating these cycles of feeling the goodness, feeling the inclusion, and making us less prone to want to engage in much more deeper conversations, because again, we can fire off that message quickly and not necessarily have to engage.
Mm.
So it sounds like that's the quick reward in a way.
Absolutely. It's the quick reward. And engaging in deep conversations around political differences, especially in an electoral cycle, that's the productive ones generally aren't quick. But the reward, I would say, is deeper, is better.
It reminded me like the difference between, fast food that can be quick, satisfying at the moment, but then it has long-term negative consequences for us. And homemade prepared meal that may take longer to prepare. So if we have these more difficult conversations, but we take the time to really explore and focus on the quality of the conversation, go a little bit deeper, rather than of just having a quick reward, the consequences of that could be longer term, actually more well-being for all of us, sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in the context of like if and when these conversations take place at work, because they're happening already, kind of regardless.
Yeah.
It's impossible for us to compartmentalize like everything that happens outside of work with everything that happens, or from everything that happens inside of work.
You know what I think is interesting from what you said, Chris, is that there's so much tied into our identity, our values of who we think we are, what we believe in, and what we think is important to us. When I've seen these kind of conversations play out, whether it's an argument or even a healthy debate, it's always focused on, I want you to change your entire worldview to my worldview. And then there's other people that say, like, why don't we just agree to disagree? And then there are people that say, the opposite, like, we can't agree to disagree on human rights or things like that. How do you conceptualize a productive dialogue around politics?
Yeah. So I think that's a really important distinction to make, Chris. There's a very big difference between persuasion conversations and every single other kind of conversation. Conversations.
Yeah. That's it. New word. That's it.
New word. We just coined it right here today. And there's some really fantastic research about like how do you persuade somebody to change their mind, particularly over a charged issue. I think David Fleischer at the LGBTQ Center in Los Angeles has done a lot of really great research in things called deep canvassing. And then Hal Malchow, he recently passed away. He was a fantastic leader in looking at how to change people's minds through like mail programs. Like, can you even change people's minds through traditional forms of political persuasion? And all of the research says that it takes a lot of time and a lot of vulnerability and willingness on both parties to understand each other and really define like what are the shared values that we have, and how do those shared values then therefore relate to how we act and interact in a political space. And that's tough. And so like thinking about like workplace conversations, you're not going to persuade your coworkers to vote differently, like most probably, unless you have that relationship outside of work, and probably the majority of those conversations are already taking place outside of the workplace anyway. Yeah, I don't know. Did that answer your question? I kind of got on a couple of tangents.
So then, yeah, I think you're right. It's very hard to persuade people to do things. Like, my background is a therapist, and there's a whole entire field of or approach motivational interviewing, which is just how to get people to want to change.
Yeah.
So then in the workplace, what do you think is like a more reasonable discussion or a way to have a discussion around politics and differences?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that unless your workplace is a political campaign, like there's a really high potential for political discussions to harm relationships or harm the kind of people that you're serving. So I think of it like from my work, like our members are our mission. And so like almost rule number one of just how we ethically interact with each other is we got to make sure that whatever happens between us does not negatively harm the people that we're serving. So to my mind, that's like centering around core values. But I would say the top four things to keep in mind around like having conversations about politics or elections in the workplace is understand that you're probably not going to win a debate against somebody else with their deeply held feelings and beliefs. So I would say like approach number one, take winning off of the table. Because once the conversation's not about me winning somebody, me showing that you have the wrong answer, again, activating that sort of negative experience, me excluding you from the conversation. Once that's out of the way, you can then just focus on understanding like, hey, Chris, I think that from what you're saying, we might have some different viewpoints here. I'd really love to understand more about how you've arrived at this conclusion, which is almost word for word what I would say in a work meeting. If somebody like came up with a different solution from the one that I like had in mind for an issue, like it's an opportunity to better understand somebody else's perspective. And so when you sort of approach it like that, you're taking out the assumptions and really leaving the space for that person to share if they're willing to share. So I guess that's number two. Or maybe that should be number one. Ask for consent to engage in these conversations. Like for some people, it's very difficult and it's deeply personal. And we show up to work to do work. So I guess that could be really thinking about preserving the relationship that you have with that person. We're colleagues before election. We're going to be colleagues afterwards, and every single time in between, because elections happen every single year in the United States, we still will need to understand how to work with each other in a way that preserves dignity and respect and our work product too.
I love that. Sounds like being really intentional when we have these conversations. Not having as a win of I need to win in this conversation, but a win being it's still work environment, being productive, plus keeping that relationship and not making it impact those work relationships or even personal relationships we can talk about later. And also asking for consent and being curious and open. My question is, when somebody says something that is triggering and it goes against our values and we feel that survival brain, that instinct to fight or flight or other ones triggered, what would you recommend we do at that moment when somebody feels, that anger come up and our brain the higher thinking brain shuts off? What to do at that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So having that sort of situational awareness is very key, because that's going to determine whether or not you can engage in a productive conversation. So thinking about how do we have productive disagreement? If I am activated by what somebody has to say, so much so that it's just Chris Geggy, maybe Chris Wong, I need to stop and take a quick breath. That should be a great moment to signal to yourself, I need some self-care time. And I would probably use some, so it's the disarm method. So I'm going to disengage in the conversation. So I'm going to acknowledge refocus, and then moderate the conversation, ARM. So I probably say something like, Lucy, it sounds like you're really passionate about this. In the moment, I don't feel like I'm in the space to have this conversation. So maybe we can address this later. Can we focus on the task that we have at hand?
I love that. I would say it might, for some people, they might not be able to do that right away because they might still react.
and especially because again, we have this immediate instant gratification thing. We hear something, so we're used to being able to post something online very quickly to respond back to get those talking points. Whereas, at work, if we're preserving the relationship, we might need to hold off. Now, what I will say too is we don't want people to like be in hostile work environments or to face harassment. So like if this is happening around you a lot and you're uncomfortable with it and you're not able to engage in a productive conversation with that person, like, hey Lucy, that really landed on me, and I didn't really feel good when I heard you say that. What can we agree on right now to make sure that we're still able to maintain a respectful relationship? Like if you can have that, fantastic. If not, then just make sure that you're taking care of yourself and maybe seeking out resources from like a supervisor or HR to help you intervene in that situation.
That's actually where I was going to ask next, based off of Lucy's question, because I think one of the things we often recommend to people is when they feel that microaggression, or just even outside of politics,
Or it could be a macroaggression, yeah.
Right? Macro, micro, it's go back and give that feedback, tell people what impact it had on you and give that feedback. I'm wondering, similar to that, I think there's oftentimes people will give that feedback and the other person just is not ready to receive it. They're like, stop being so sensitive. I'm just joking, or don't take it so seriously. You're not like them. Any of those variations, right? To kind of minimize the impact of what they said. How would you kind of navigate that?
And that's a wonderful question. Where do you think those reactions come from?
Well, I think that's the defensiveness, that fight or flight. So for me, it's thinking like they're in fight mode. They're ready to like just defend themselves to the ends of the earth there.
Yeah, absolutely. So like thinking about like the insider outsider kind of mechanism, when we say like another person's actions or words have negatively impacted us, that person is absolutely in defense mode. Like, well, I'm going to be leaning into, trying to minimize the impact of my actions. And you've really got to think about like, yeah, is this person ready and willing to receive the feedback in a way that is productive for them? And if not, I would probably pivot away from the conversation and try to see like, is there somebody else who can help me have this conversation with that person, or who this person might listen to better than me?
Mm-hmm. I think this is a great time because I'm actually working with a group right now of managers who they're finding that a lot of their staff aren't able to have the conversation with each other. They're actually coming to them to help kind of moderate or mediate those conversations. And they want their staff to have a little bit more capacity to manage those conversations between themselves. And like you, I agree. There's only a limit of how much you can do between yourselves. Like if one party's super entrenched, you're not going to make any progress. But when it becomes a culture, like the entire culture thing, what are you thinking about with like leaders, how they're kind of helping to shape and nurture that environment?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is take it all the way back to what are our shared values? Like, what are the things that we believe to be important about our relationship with each other at work? And then based on those shared values, what does that mean for how we interact with each other to maintain a professional atmosphere? And that's some hard work. But I think really peeling all of the layers back and sticking to those shared core values, and then like reinforcing the conversation with that. Like, hey, we might have a different viewpoint on this issue, but that doesn't mean that we still can't work together on a project. So actually, one of the people that I have worked with the longest, his name is Chris Nyers. Shout out to Chris Nyers, also another Chris.
It's a great name.
It's fantastic. So we've been working together in a volunteer capacity since 2007, and I tend to hold very liberal viewpoints, and Chris, opposite end of the spectrum. And it's also kind of funny. We're fraternity brothers, so we're also brothers. And we're able to still work with each other and engage with each other because we have that sort of set of shared values and that respect for each other and preserving the relationship. Like, we have had a lot of different arguments and debates on different policy issues, and we're still able to have frank and authentic conversations with each other about the shared work that we do. It's in risk prevention and crisis management for our fraternity. So like, our end goal is to make sure that we're able to provide this service to our undergraduates. And we do that by leaning into, again, the values that we have and what that means for how we interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It almost sounds like when we have this difficult conversation with somebody, not stay on the level of the different viewpoints and differences, but look somewhere deeper for something that we can share and agree on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess this is point number 3. We got to be able to be vulnerable with each other. If you're able to have these conversations in sort of like a growth mindset space where you're trying to understand somebody else's point of view, it might not change what you believe overall, but it still gives you better insight into that person and their experience of the same exact situation. Elections impact everybody differently, regardless of what happens in November. It's going to impact different people in different ways, right? It's just going to be the truth. And so even with that in mind, like thinking about how are we going to approach maintaining relationships afterwards. So this is the advice that I would give to your managers, like already try to have like sort of like after action plan ready to go. Like, what are we going to do to make sure that things aren't going to get heated? How do we disarm situations? How do we provide our teams with the knowledge, skills, mindsets, behaviors to engage in respectful curiosity with each other? Like, if there's the space for that, how do we give them the tools to disengage from a conversation when it gets a little too heated, but still maintain that respect for each other? And then I think there's also like a sort of self-awareness piece too. How do we make sure that everybody understands, like, we're colleagues before the election, we're colleagues afterwards. Every single election is going to make somebody feel some kind of thing, whether positively or negatively. But at the end of the day, how are we still able to come together as a team and as a community?
When somebody is in that hijacked mode, or let's say they have a fixed mindset, but they are aware, they are open to change, what would you say could be something they could tell themselves to have that courage to open up, to be curious, to have that vulnerability?
I would say practice saying yet. So I don't know what Chris feels about this, and maybe it's something different. I don't understand that yet, as opposed to I just don't understand, because then the conversation's over. When you're starting to introduce that yet thing, it's sort of like an action that you can take. Like, I might not understand what Lucy's experience is in Southern California yet. I don't understand your experience because we come from like different backgrounds, and but that doesn't mean I still can't understand who you are and your perspectives of it. So like thinking about like political issues, I might not understand like what this whole side of the spectrum is doing with that, but I'm open to having the conversation. That's sort of what yet is. I'm open to learning about it, and that's sort of like thinking about a skill. Like, I'm not good at difficult conversations yet, right? And so if when we start to practice some of these things, then we can build that muscle. Now, if I'm being honest, if somebody is at the beginning of their journey around like growth mindsets versus fixed mindsets, and like that's just the reality with everybody, especially in political conversations. Like, we're all at different stages of our journeys. And for people who are at the beginning of those stages, trying to find like trustworthy resources to start some of that education yourself. So like, I might not understand much about the immigrant experience from the Czech Republic yet. However, I know that I can go look up some different resources, maybe some different accounts, biographies, just straight up history, to better understand where people are coming from with that experience and that background. So just even those simple steps of being open to like reading stuff and then kind of taking it, you could take it a step further by then asking somebody and showing that respectful curiosity. Now, I also want to say we don't want to place a whole lot of undue burden or emotional labor on people from communities or backgrounds that are not yours. That's not really fair to them. And one person can't ever represent an entire community. It's just impossible. Again, because each and every one of us has our own very narrow sliver of perception.
I think that's so key, is that idea of building that awareness and understanding of somebody else's lived experience. There was a book, Big Data, where they just looked at all these research trends from Google. Are you familiar with the book?
I've seen it. I can't say that I've read it.
It was so interesting, and they found one of the things that one of the research things that stood out to me was after there was like a terrorist attack during Obama's presidency, and he gave some sort of speech about how Muslims are not our enemy, they're firefighters and whatever. And they looked at Google Trends, and there was like, a huge number of searches about like, are Muslims terrorists and blah blah, all these like hateful search terms. A few months later, there was another terrorist attack, and this time he changed it to, Muslims are our neighbors, they're our friends, they're the people that we interact with on a daily basis. And they found that there was a lot less research for those same terms. And so I think it is that shared lived experience, or just understanding of somebody else's thing. I'd love to get your take on this, because when I used to do cultural humility trainings a lot more frequently, one of the things I would talk about is, it's not, if you're a person, if you're a marginalized community, you're right, it's not your job to teach everybody else about your experience. And at the same time, somebody has to teach them. They have to learn somehow. Somebody has to share their experience so that other people can learn experience, even if you don't speak for everybody. So if you say it's not your job, you're right, it's not your job. It's somebody should do it.
So I want to touch on a couple of things that you said. Yeah, words shape our thoughts and therefore our actions. So if we think of a community as only X or only Y, then that's going to shape how we interact with them. So those two speeches are a really great example of just how powerful our words are when we're talking about other people and even ourselves and other people's experiences. So I like keeping that in mind, like, hey, again, colleagues before election, colleagues afterwards, somebody's going to be happy, somebody is not going to be happy with that election. So even thinking about how we share our own reactions in the workplace and with the people around us can have a profound impact on those people too. Again, because we don't like to be excluded. We don't like to feel that we're wrong. And even though we're taking like winning off of the table in our workplace conversation, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And a lot of people are going to feel a lot of really deep feelings around that. So being careful with how we're shaping those conversations, and frankly, challenging people with how they are shaping the conversations with the words that they're using. We see a lot of divisive language, but the reality is, if you look at a standard distribution of people and just their political viewpoints, we all pretty much fit underneath the middle of that bell curve. So there's, in fact, more that unites us than divides us. Again, leaning into those shared values, like, okay, so we might not agree on the outcome of the election, but what can we agree on as neighbors, right? What can we agree on as people who carpool together at work? What are some of those things that we share between us that can help us just help us better interact with each other? And then, so that's all on the one hand. On the other hand, yeah, you're absolutely right, Chris. I have been in a number of situations where I am the only person with my backgrounds. I am Mexican American. I am a gay man. I'm from California who lived in the Midwest and then like all around New England. And now I'm in Maryland, like very, very different experiences from other people. And so, I'd say if you find yourself in that position and you're open and willing to share your story and experience, and it's not in a sort of exploitative way, like people are genuinely curious about that, like go right ahead, share your story, and share that journey, because it's through that kind of storytelling and relationship building, again, preserving the relationship, that we're able to build those deeper connections and come a better understanding.
So we focused a lot on the workplace. I wonder if we could spend a few minutes on the challenging conversations in our personal lives. I know somebody that she just broke up with her boyfriend because they disagreed on the presidential election on whom, and had some personal strong opinions. And they realized, because they're on the opposite spectrum, that it's better to take a break from those. Anything that would be different when we, from the workplace, that's coming up for you? Any tips for people in those situations?
Yeah. That's a lot. So there's, I forget who released this study. It was either Gartner or McLean and Company. And it said that for Americans, we are most likely to make friends at work than we are outside of the workplace. This includes like church activities, other things like that, just because of the amount of time that we spend with each other. So that's why, like, taking winning off the table and preserving the relationship at work is incredibly important, so you can preserve those relationships. So thinking about like our personal relationships, conversations with family members can be difficult because especially with like elders, because of just the way that social dynamics can work in families. So usually, like folks like parents, uncles, aunts, grandparents, they're going to see you as like the little kid that they remember like bumping on their knee. And so like we can tend to revert back into those relationships, or those, the framework of those relationships very easily if we haven't had an opportunity to engage and kind of like just renegotiate like who we are as adults together, and experiencing this world together. Not understanding or not being there as a fly on the wall for your friend's conversation, like that can be a lot, especially because of just how divisive political discourse has been in our country. Like thinking about like shared values, I would hope that they had a shared values conversation to try to figure out like, so what are the things that are negotiable or non-negotiable for us in this relationship? And then I would also say, like, and this is the same thing for workplace relationships and conversations too, like understanding how to set and maintain boundaries too. Like, hey, Lucy, I appreciate that you're very passionate about this. I can see that this election is very important to you. I just don't like talking about this at work. I'd much rather focus on the project that we're working on. Can we shift the conversation over here? And then being able to maintain that boundary. Maybe I'd even say something like, hey, I really do appreciate our relationship and have like appreciated the wonderful things we've been able to accomplish up to this point. I don't want this area to negatively impact who we are and the things that we can accomplish together. It's a lot more difficult to do when it's your cousin, it's your sibling, it's your spouse or significant other. Hopefully with spouse, you've had these conversations before ahead of time, but some people haven't. And so, like in terms of like the personal relationship, trying to refocus around like, so what do we know is true about how, again, we want to interact with each other? Now, I've got several uncles who are very, very set in their political beliefs, and they're the kind of person that really want to talk or score the talking points. Like they'll say stuff to get a rise out of you, as opposed to engaging in a whole in like a discussion around like, hey, so that really did not land right with me, for a number of different reasons. Can we talk about how we can have a better conversation on this topic? They're definitely not interested in that. So then it kind of comes to like, all right, so how do I want to respond to this situation? And what do I want to be true about how I approach this relationship with that person? Because then it sort of takes the ball back into your court to focus on things that are in your locus of control. So like, these are my mom's brothers. It's very important to me that my mom maintains the connections with them. So I know that in these circumstances, I can remove myself, even just briefly, to kind of preserve that relationship. There's no easy answer to any of this because it's just so complicated, especially when you get into familial dynamics. I mean, there's our political identities kind of things, and then like our identities within our families, and sometimes they can clash. And sometimes you've got to do the thing that helps you preserve yourself too, and just be able to disengage and try to maintain that relationship from afar, or completely disengage from that relationship. And I'd say if they're open to the conversation, like being able to set up some like a framework, some boundaries for this, like with my fraternity brother, we have a very psychologically safe relationship. We can be vulnerable with each other and ask these different questions because we know that it's coming from a good place. We truly are trying to understand each other. And it's not more of like a got you kind of relationship. And that's because we've been able to build things that way.
So what I'm hearing, even the growth mindset could be applicable here in those situations. Let's say you do have a fight with a family member or a dear friend outside of work. Maybe we haven't discovered a way how to talk about this yet.
Yeah,
all of us
absolutely.
are learning to have better conversations. So it doesn't mean that we will never have a good relationship ever after this fight. But we haven't just found a way to talk about this together yet, or something like that.
Absolutely. We haven't found a productive way to talk about this yet. So how can we do that? Of course, the other person, you've got to be, you have to want to engage with them. They have to want to engage back. And so sort of like opt in to so if we're going to concede that for certain things, you're not going to change my mind. Like as a gay man, I will not be convinced that I should not be able to marry my husband and have that marriage legally recognized. Like that's a non-starter for me. And I'm still willing to talk about like economic policy or other things like that. Like, so here are the areas that are non-starters for me, but that still doesn't mean we can't have a conversation around other LGBTQ issues, for instance. So and that was kind of commonplace in the marriage equality campaigns too. So I worked with a lot of people who are deeply religious, who are also deeply conservative, and figuring out a way okay, so we're not going to agree on certain things. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay. We don't have to agree on everything to be able to figure out how we can work together. And in particular, to go on sort of like this journey together toward the freedom to marry. There's this one mother, self-described Catholic Republican mother in Ohio. And it was actually her son who helped her along this journey. And so sharing those personal stories as a way to open up the conversation for better understanding. So she's a very devout Catholic. She doesn't want the government forcing any institution to, or any religious institution to recognize a same-sex marriage. But that doesn't mean a government shouldn't recognize her son's marriage. Like that was a thing for her. This is my faith, that's one thing, but I want my child to have those protections. And so like seeing how some of those values like come into action, that kind of helped her engage in deeper conversation and finding, all right, so what is that shared value? And then how can we arrive at a better place together?
I mean, that's really intricate discussion and conversation to have, to like even to create the psychologically safe space where you're willing to discuss it and be vulnerable, but then even to parse out like, hey, you might believe this and this might be true for this one domain and this might not be true in another domain. Like think about that gay marriage thing. So I'm just thinking like that must have taken a lot of conversation over time to create that space where you can talk about it and figure out how do we work,
Absolutely.
how do we come together.
And like that's why political conversations at work and like with your family members around election time, very different from political persuasion or persuasion of any kind. Like that was very deep work that was done by the mother, the deep conversations that her son was willing to engage with her on and that she was open to having as well. And that's why like when we are able to lean into better understanding, even if at the end of the day we don't agree on a policy or on an outcome, that doesn't mean we can't understand and respect each other.
Yeah.
And through that mutual understanding, through that mutual respect, grow to be stronger together.
Yeah, the good news is that's the tagline of our show. We communicate better, we can live better.
And we have the growth mindset, so it is teachable, it's learnable.
Absolutely.
There is hope for all of us.
I'm wondering,
one conversation at a time.
Yeah,
Yes.
one conversation at a time. I'm wondering, man, that'd be another good conversation. Religion, talking about differences in religion, and then religion and politics. I think that's a huge one too. Why don't we take a break? And I think if you're okay, I'd love to demonstrate or role play some of these things in the workplace and see how we could communicate better in them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Hey, Chris here. I really appreciate you listening to this podcast. And if you are listening to this podcast because you're looking to get better at these difficult conversations, well, if you really want to de-escalate difficult behaviors and you want to be assertive without being aggressive and being true to yourself, I have a self-paced course that can really help you, because I know it's difficult being assertive in lots of different situations. If you're at work and you have to give feedback, if you have to deliver bad news to an employee, or deliver bad news to somebody that you care about in your personal life, or you're struggling to deal with defensive or sensitive people who are pushing your buttons and you don't know how to push back. You know, it doesn't have to be that way. There is a world where you can handle these tough emotions with confidence. You can speak honestly and kindly while you're still being assertive. And you have the ability to manage emotional outbursts and stubbornness calmly, because these are things that I've had to overcome and learn. And so this self-paced course goes through all of those things. I've created this trust framework that helps you think through how to prepare for and how to facilitate hard conversations. And you hear a lot of it actually in this podcast as I talk about how to handle difficult conversations in lots of different scenarios. Currently, the course is closed for enrollment. There's a waiting list. If you are interested in learning more, enrollment will open up at the end of August and the beginning of September. So please go to the website. I'll link it down below, and you can learn more about it and join the waiting list if you want to hear more about it. But I'd love to see you there.
And the other thing I noticed is whenever people that are like on either side, I've actually noticed both things, like the super extreme on either side, when they talk about it, they start getting super like visibly angry as they're talking. Like they're just talking and kind of ranting, and their mind goes tangentially, and they're like it suddenly reminds them of something else, and like they don't really care if you're on board or not. They're just kind of ranting as if they had no one else to talk to, and they're like, finally I have someone to share this with. And so that's what I always notice is like, wow, you're just angry, like something's going on for you, you're just in a bad place that you can't even like talk about this with somebody.
And like that's another super fascinating thing. I wish I had more degrees and a research lab. So people that do have research labs, please do more research into this. So they're talking about this issue, whatever the issue is, and they're sort of like re-experiencing a moment for them. And like, particularly if it's like a negative moment, it's like reliving that trauma. There we go, therapist Chris. And they're reliving that, they're re-traumatizing themselves and creating a negative feedback loop inside there. Now, given the context that it's in too, like that could also be activating the reward center of the brain as well. It feels good to get into this like angry space. And like when we're seeing this situation, because we've retrained our brains to react this way, our brains are like, oh my gosh, we're about to do the thing. Let's dive into that negative spiral.
The way you just said that, I think just triggered a memory in me. It's actually called a flashbulb memory. It's when that it's when the flood of cortisol hits your hippocampus during a really extreme event. That's why you can remember extreme events really clearly, like 9/11. For those of us that were around for it, we can remember what was happening because of that rush of cortisol into our hippocampus. So that's exactly what you're describing that I didn't think about or connect until this moment. It's very similar in that sense. I wasn't going to include that in the recording, but I guess I will now.
I think so.
We got to.
We have to.
My doggy, special guest.
So let's talk, or let's demonstrate how this could feel in a work situation. I'm interested. So I don't know any scenarios you have in mind, but I think it'd be interesting. The scenario you were kind of hinting at before is like if we're in a team meeting and one of us were to say something really out of pocket, to quote the kids these days. So I'd love for you to demonstrate, Chris or Gaggy, if you're up for it.
Oh, were you asking me? Yeah, I feel great about being the manager.
Yeah, great.
So
how do you feel? Yeah. Do you want to be the one that says really inappropriate things, or do you want me to say the inappropriate things?
Go for it today.
Okay.
I mean, sure. The one.
But let's still keep it work professional.
Yeah. And we could say this is towards the let's not bog them like everybody down with like too many details about the meeting, but let's just say this is a regular team catch-up meeting on like this is what we're doing the other week. It's not like anything special. Gaggy, why don't you start us off, and then I'll wait like maybe one or two beats, and then I'll jump into something.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome back, everybody. I hope that you have had wonderful weeks. I'm looking forward to checking in with just how all of our tasks are so we can mark them off of the task board. But to open us up, I'm just curious, what is everybody looking forward to most over this weekend? I know the election's coming up, so I'm hoping that y'all get some time to kind of relax and decompress.
Yeah, I'm not even trying to think about the election, actually. I'm just trying to relax and completely forget about that. Go somewhere camping, go to the nature.
Oh, good. I went camping for the first time just a few months ago. It was really good.
Yeah, I love that. The night sky is gorgeous, especially in the desert.
Nice.
I recommend, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the election. I was just watching on the news, and that I just saw this news report that Biden is just putting all these migrants on airplanes in the middle of the night to just send them to different cities, and I thought that's just wild. Why is this quote unquote president getting away with all this stuff? This is nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. That I can see that these issues are really important to you, Chris. And I think having a discussion about them is really important. And it's great that we're thinking critically about the kind of impact that some of these things could have. Yeah, as the manager right now in this moment, I'm realizing that I kind of messed up and asked people directly some questions around like the elections. And what I'd like to do, if we could, is kind of reframe the conversation. What could we do to make sure that we're still engaging with each other around our shared values. I honestly think I messed that up. Meta moment, because in real time, these are tough. And like, I don't think I addressed how that could have breached psychological safety, and how to come back to some of that psychological safety. So maybe how I would reframe that is, Chris, that's a really interesting news report that you've seen. I know from my own experience of just looking at the news reports and stuff, I kind of have some skepticism around like what's actually going on there. What I would love to do is just really kind of get back to our check-in question, like what are you looking forward to most this weekend?
Listen, Geggy, I respect you. Like we've worked together for a long time. Like I really like you as a manager. You're great. You don't have to apologize. Like I don't like you don't have to be weak about this stuff, right? Like we're all adults here. We've all worked together for a while. We know each other. Like we can talk about this stuff, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. I really do appreciate your saying that. I wouldn't necessarily phrase it as being weak in terms of the things. I just want to reground ourselves in some of our shared values of just being respectful with each other. I know that just from my experience as somebody who's Mexican American, that kind of reporting really did land on me differently because of a number of different factors, from the things that are impacting the communities who are being planed in or not. I feel like I'm digging myself into a hole here.
Well, let's cut there. I think let's cut there. I think that's good. I didn't make it easy for you.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm writing that down on my notepad. Like here's the thing too though, like managers, like they're having to address these issues in real time, right?
Right.
Like
Exactly.
so like what are we doing? Like we don't want to like put the stop on that and potentially like harm the relationship. Well, we do. Well, first of all, I think because we kind of opened up like sharing all of that stuff, like I just assumed like psychological safety. So maybe we could like go in and be like, hey, Chris, I think that is a little inappropriate for this space because here's how this landed on me from my lived experience. What I'd like to do is like maybe hold that conversation off. Like it doesn't feel like it's going to be productive to our overall tasks today, which is making sure that we're checking the things off of our list and setting ourselves up for next week, right?
Yeah.
Versus like another situation where like you have to address the harms, I think, in an appropriate way. Like we don't want those breaches of psychological safety to remain because that harms the team. It hurts the team. It creates that feeling of exclusion on our team members, and again, like that feeling that as physical pain. Right. So yeah, I think in that scenario, because it seems like we have like a good relationship, I would kind of like lean in and say like, hey, Chris, maybe that sounds like a really fascinating article and viewpoint. Maybe we can talk about this after the meeting. I would really love to know what you're looking forward to this weekend. Or something like that to kind of pivot away from that, to kind of talk to you like in person, one-on-one. Like if it's more of like an egregious thing, like those Democrats, blah, 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 or something like that, where it's just like, it's really aggressive and assertive. That would be sort of like a different intervention as a manager, like definitely calling it in, like in that moment, like, hey, Chris, that conversation or those comments weren't in line with our core values. What we're going to need to do right now is just stop and reframe and even reset this conversation. So what can we agree upon right now to make sure that we're still able to engage respectfully with each other? And then I think also too, Lucia just made an assumption that your feelings were sort of neutral about things. Like, let's say it was about all of those immigrants from the Czech Republic coming in, and we're flying them around on airplanes. Like, that would be a different kind of intervention as well. I want to make sure that, like, as a manager, I'm caring for you as well. So I think it really does come down to how well do you know your team members? How well do you know about like how they're going to react to things, and sort of anticipating some of those responses, and ahead of time, like creating some of those boundaries. Like, all right, so here's what we know to be true. Like, what we want to center is our relationships and being those colleagues before the election and after the election. So, what are sort of the things that we can talk about and the things that maybe we should talk about like later outside of work or something along those lines? Because what we also want managers to be careful of is like not saying you can't talk about these things, because there could be like legal implications around what are they called, concerted efforts or conversations.
Right.
National Labor Relations Board. So we want managers to be careful of that, and then understanding that, hey, so when something does come up, have a plan to intervene, and be able to talk with the team.
Yeah. I definitely threw you for a loop. Lucy, from your perspective, what do you think could have been done differently, I guess?
You know, one scenario comes up for me. And you're doing a wonderful job validating people's where they're coming from and kind of really having the empathy, wondering where they're coming from, what's their experience. Sometimes I wonder, just saying, Chris, it seems like it's really making you upset. And you know what? There are also a lot of things that make me upset. I totally get it. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sorry you have this experience. Let's give words to somebody else. Let's say if it's a meeting, let's say frame it in one sentence what you're looking forward to in the meeting. So kind of creating already a framework for that and kind of a boundary around. So it's not going to be sharing for 10 minutes, but in 1-2 sentences max. What is it? Another way could be, I had a group when January 6th, things happening. We just had a meeting. They were focusing on building their businesses. And one person was really emotional, triggered. And she's like, I cannot focus today. Like, can we talk about what's happening right now? Did you see the news? Like, I keep watching it since morning. And I'm really afraid. So I validated, it can be scary. It's these strange times. And bringing it back to like, what is in our control that we can do right now? What are we here for? And looking at, yes, validating, yes, this is scary, this is upsetting, I get it. And right now we cannot do anything about that. Or if you do have something you want to talk to somebody, go and take care of that. If not, if you can have that hour here, let's refocus. Let's refocus on something that we can actually change, that we can control. And that is how to be productive in this meeting. That was for their businesses, how you can grow your business. Then you can make more impact, let's say, in that specific meeting. So I wonder with bringing it back to what can we control? What are some of your wins? If that was frustrating, let's focus on some wins that we can bring in if that will be appropriate for that person. What's coming up for you? And hear this strategy, kind of bringing it to what we can control, bring it to the present and future.
I always think of it, these kind of situations, like, everybody feels the energy in the room shift. And there's like, it's one of those like choose your own adventures where you can go a million different ways. And there's actually a lot of different ways that are correct to do this. It's not just one way. I've always encouraged managers to not say a lot. Like, so like I do say apologize, take ownership of the situation, which I love that you did. Like you were like, hey, listen, I apologize. I shouldn't have talked about this. This is my bad. I didn't mean to bring that up. We're supposed to be talking about this other thing. I don't know why I was even talking about that. And so I appreciate that. And I think it's just set that hard boundary of like, hey, I know this is a sensitive topic. I know this is important to you. So I'm happy to talk about this later, Chris. I'd love to make sure that we focus on what we're supposed to do here, and then we could talk about that afterwards. I tend to focus more on like, this is what we need to do now. Let's worry about this other thing later. I'll validate you later. More, I'll validate you now, but I'll acknowledge you now. And let's talk more later about like whether it was harmful, how harmful, being mindful of like, and then we can recontract in future conversations, like with the entire team. Like, hey, what do we need to do here? Because I messed up last time. We talked about politics. We're not really supposed to be like everybody has different feelings, and that's okay. Let's figure out how we can talk together about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said, Lucy, about like acknowledging what's happening. So like when we acknowledge like, hey, Chris, it sounds like you're really like upset about all of this happening. Like that acknowledgement doesn't necessarily have to be agreement. And in fact, acknowledging that somebody else is feeling something, it's validating that, hey, somebody with a different perspective than I do is having something that is also a valid reaction to this experience. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. So I think it'd be interesting. Why don't we role play the next part of this is where, let's say we had this meeting, you were able to get me back on track, and you just wanted to catch up with me after the meeting real fast to just touch base. It's not an official one-to-one or a coaching session, but you just wanted to check in with me because you're like, what's happening here?
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris, thank you for taking the time to meet with me to talk about this. I just want to level set right now. I want to understand before I seek to be interested. And I just really want to make sure that we're grounding this conversation about like what happened in our check-in meeting in our relationship. So from the get-go, I want you to know that an outcome for me is understanding where you're coming from so that I can better support you in the work that you're doing, because I can tell that this is an issue that's really important to you, that the things that are happening in this electoral cycle are having an impact in one way or another. And so I just love to know what's going on, and then how we can figure out how to best support you, and also figure out how we can best do our work together as a team.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Gaggy, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm not trying to get you in trouble. I don't want to get you in trouble by having these kind of, if I'm not supposed to talk about it, I'm not supposed to talk about it. I just know that you've always tried to create this open environment, and so like I want to talk about the stuff that's important to me. And this is important, right? This is our country. This is the stuff that's going on around us. Do we want to have our country get better or get worse, right? We kind of have to make that decision as a country, and so that's why it's important to vote and be active and do all that stuff come election time.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think engaging in the process, like that's one of our country's core values, is making sure that we're engaging with each other and making, to the best of our abilities, like the decision that we think is right. And that's not necessarily going to be the same thing for everybody. And so what I challenge you to do is to think about how other people in the conversation might be impacted by the different stories, the different things that we bring up in conversation. So I know I opened the door. I talked about the election. And in that moment, I know for me, I wasn't thinking about how everybody feels about elections. I love elections. So I'm really excited about that. But we don't know how other people are going to react to the election. And so for me, I know what I'm going to do is just try to be a little bit more conscious about how I enter the space around elections, and then also like think about how to make sure again that we're still grounded in our core values of dignity and respect for everybody.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'm on the board with you. Like I think it's important.
Yeah.
After I read, a lot of Nelson Mandela's work, I think he was spot on in like making sure people were engaged, and really, politics are important. So I just thought it was important to discuss, we should be talking about it out loud, right? But if you don't want me to talk about it, I guess I also won't talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, let's try to figure out a way to bring that passion into the work that we're doing, like to make sure that we're able to finish all of our tasks, all of our deliverables, so that we're providing the best service that we can, and then figure out a way that maybe as a team we could engage in a community service action together, so that we're still grounded in our core values of dignity and respect for each other, and then maybe putting that energy around the election into something that, you know, supports the community around us.
Sure. Is that it?
Great. Yeah.
All right, we can cut there. Great. So let's debrief that. Lucy,
Yeah.
how do you think that went?
So what I am noticing, I think also I need to give kudos to Gigi for staying emotionally calm, especially after being called weak previously in the conversation.
Yeah.
So for any manager who would be called weak, I think that could be a very triggering moment. So kudos to you. That's already something powerful in my eyes, really being able to self-regulate and staying calm. And in the following conversation, I would say that also the tone was calm, non-aggressive from both sides. And even Chris said, yeah, you know what, if you want, I'm not gonna. So it showed like respecting the boundaries in a way of the meeting and being open. So I think that went well. Of course, that could be closing off. I'm not gonna talk about it, never.
Could be, yeah.
But it seemed in that context, yes, I'll respect that boundary of the meeting. Let's focus on work. It could be one of the interpretations. So in that way, it went well. And what you're doing incredibly well is really being focused on the psychological safety of people, feeling heard, validated, and creating that opening for them if they really want to express themselves further. There are some way. Let's talk about that. So you're not closing that option. No, for sure, we're not going to be talking about that. But you're creating some boundary. And at the same time, there's an opening if that's needed for that person. Yes, we can take it to the next step if you need. But here is the boundary and here is the flexibility part. So kind of yes ending. And finding also a thing that you could connect on and align on, looking at the values. Yes, this is important. So both of you, in a way, found a place that you could both agree on and build on the top of that. So wonderful. Chris, how was that for you?
I do appreciate how calm you were. I didn't know if me calling you weak would come back to me at some point. What I find interesting is like your approach is similar to how we often tell people to navigate difficult conversations in general. What I noticed was that you guided the conversation a little bit more than I typically do. You guided it towards the shared values, whereas I stay very open and stay super curious about like what is going on for you, what's important for you in the situation, and I wait for them to say some sort of value before but you are guiding me towards that. But that's more in line with kind of why these are hard conversations in general. You want me to focus immediately on like what do we share in terms of values and beliefs. And so I appreciate that you shared about what you're gonna do as well. I think that was nice, so that it wasn't just like you got to change. You're a fool. Get your act together. Yeah, the only thing I would have added was just being more explicit about what outcome you're looking for from me. Well, not the how to get there, but what is the goal that you need? Like, how can we get to a place where you feel like you can speak your mind and that we're holding back from certain conversations in group settings. Like I personally, that's my approach, is just like being more explicit about what you're expecting out of me, especially in a manager employee relationship, being that concrete. Like, I also need you to stop saying that in group settings. Unless we all agree in a group setting, we want to talk about this in detail and learn about our own beliefs. But yeah, that's the only thing I would have added to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, or there can be like a place and a time for those conversations if you're very explicit about like how it's all set up. So yeah, like maybe if at like a team retreat, like we're having more of like a get to know you kind of deeper conversation setting, like that's fantastic. But Chris, it's our Friday meeting. Everybody wants to go into the weekend happy. Right?
Yeah.
It's funny because I normally would have more of an open-ended question approach in sort of some of those exploration conversations, um, because I like to better understand that. I think, and this is probably me going into a safety bias with an election happening and just how divisive it is. Like I really did want to hone in on like the specific shared values. Like these are the things that we are agreeing upon, like as the foundation of our relationship with each other. How do we make sure that we're maintaining that and getting back to it?
These are hard situations in general. And, there's no easy way out of them. I think there's lots of ways they can go right or at least okay. And there's lots of ways they can go wrong. It's like multiverse here. You can infinite realities. And so it's really about I think, and Lucy and I talk about this as the main point of our our podcast is at the end of the day, it's how do we create deeper and better relationships with the people we're working with around us or our personal lives and still meet the goals we're trying to get at. How do we get both the outcome we're looking for and the relationships that we're looking for?
Yeah, and I think a good part of that too is recognizing that we're going to make mistakes. I mean, I know I made a few mistakes over the course of the conversation. And like, I think being able to admit to that, to the people like, hey, I didn't handle this as well as I could have because these are really
Yeah.
difficult. So, but what I want to do is make sure that we're still able to do our best work together, Chris and Lucy.
So, Chris, as we come to the end of our podcast, what do you and Lucy, like, what are 1 to 2 takeaways you think that people could take if they really like skip the entire episode and just popped in these last 15 minutes? What's 1 to 2 things that they should take away?
Because we don't have a lot of practice with these conversations, because for a number of different reasons, because of how difficult political identity is in general, like we're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And so like, how do we hit the reset button and come back from that? And I think that is just as equally important a thing to remember as is like all of the sort of not guidelines, but all those sort of things that we've been talking about today, like for engaging in the conversations. It's assuming that we're going to have really positive relationships. We're going to have really positive interactions, that the person across from us is open to growth, is open to maintaining psychological safety, and everything happens wonderfully. And I hope it does for everybody listening. And sometimes we're going to mess it up, and that's okay. What is not okay is just leaving the mistake there and not learning from it yourself as an opportunity to grow, to practice that growth mindset, but then also to make sure that if there was any like harm done to the psychological safety of the team, that we're able to repair it in a meaningful way.
I would bring it back maybe to the growth mindset, that it is a journey. Yeah. It's not a fixed, we are all learning to have these difficult conversations. That's why they're difficult. It's not easy to get them right. And I'm also hearing, in a way, being self-compassionate to ourselves rather than judging ourselves when we mess up, when we feel that went horribly, that conversation, be it from the side of a manager or being from the side of a team member that could be judging, oh my God, Chris is bringing that up. Oh, he called him weak. Oh God. So I could be internally suffering also there. Could be really, whenever we notice getting triggered, that's part of the emotional intelligence, being able to also, when we are judging ourselves, we're judging the other, give first compassion to ourselves. This is stuff I'm not feeling comfortable right now. or also to the other one, wow, they're probably feeling. They're feeling upset. That sucks. Yeah, all of us get upset. And really having understanding, curiosity, both for ourselves and the other, rather than from the judgment. And remember that as one of the steps. No matter where in the journey, that all of us mess up, and it's okay.
Yeah. Gaggy, Lucy, I agree with both of those comments. I think those are great. You know what I think is interesting that I had never thought of is also the fact that it's okay to not talk about politics at work. It's okay to actually set a boundary of we're not going to talk about this because that's not the purpose of what we're doing here, which I think is weird for some people because I think they think there's a way to facilitate all types of conversations and you should be able to bring your full self to work. And you should be able to bring most of your full self to work. And at the same time, you are there to work. You're there for another purpose altogether. So I appreciate that. And I think that's probably going to be helpful for some managers to think about. I was like, okay, I can set a boundary. We're not going to talk about politics or this kind of stuff at work. We can save it for after work if need be, but we're not talking about it here because that's not what we're getting paid to do here. Gaggy, thank you so much. We really appreciate your sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. You dropped a lot of knowledge bombs on us. If people are like, I need to talk to this guy, I need to learn more, I need to have him work with us or consult with us or even just give us some advice, how can people reach you or follow you?
Yeah, that is a great question. Thank you for having me so much. This is a wonderful conversation. I can be found on LinkedIn as Chris Geggy, and there's only a few of us on there.
We will find you and we'll put the link into the notes.
Or just connect with everybody. Connect with all of them. There's not many of them.
Network. Have the conversations.
Lucy, any final thoughts before we sign off for today?
Just gratitude. Thank you, Gigi, for joining us and showing also lots of courage with the role play where you didn't know what was coming. It takes courage and vulnerability. So thank you so much for modeling for all of us how just sometimes we don't have to know how it's going to go. Just it takes really the courage and vulnerability to show up for those difficult conversations, be it a role play or real ones. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank you
again,
both for
Gaggy.
having me.
Hey, we appreciate everybody listening. If you are interested in connecting with him, we're going to put his LinkedIn link in the show notes. We'll get information about him. But we would love to hear your thoughts. Please like, subscribe, give us a review. Let us know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think everything he said was right? Do you think everything he said was wrong? And you think that we're all wrong about talking about everything here? Let us know. Talk to us. Subscribe, and we'll talk to you next week. Welcome to another compilation episode. This is the last one of our rest month in the summer. And then next week, we actually start back up with regular episodes, and we'll be excited to share that. But for today, we're talking about something really big: politics, money, relationships. We're talking about these three big items and how to navigate hard conversations in all of these. How to talk about politics at work with Chris Geggy. How to talk about money in your relationship with Chris Hensley. And then how to talk about your relationship for those of you that are men out there married to a woman, how to talk about relationship stuff and repair relationships with Brandy Pryor. So hope you get something out of this. These were really interesting episodes that we did, and we look forward to seeing you next week when we jump into the new episodes for season 3. See you next week.